Hey, so yeah, I wasn't planning on doing a video like this until I'd finished my, more highly edited series covering the whole game. But I'll be honest, I really don't feel like doing that much right now, and I still want to put out a video this week. And this is nice and easy, and I just feel like doing it a lot right now, and I don't feel like doing a whole lot of other stuff. So yeah, I guess I'll do it now. As well as that, even though it shouldn't factor into this video too much, I do want to say that part of the reason why I have been a little bit late to put something out, well, part of it is real life problems, but another part of it is that I kind of got wrapped up in something that I didn't think I'd be getting wrapped up in, because it's something I've never tried before, and I've always been a bit intimidated by. But since I am such a fan of this game, and I have now beaten everything 100%, and, I still want a reason to play it, but I've kind of done everything. I've gotten to the point where I've been essentially looking for unused content in the game, and basically ROM hacking it, which definitely I might not be doing a great job of it, because of course I've never done something like this before, but still, it's been crazy actually doing that for the first time, and I have managed to change some things. I've managed to hack it so that if you play as Faye, you just instantly go against the final boss, instead of playing through the game normally. That's obviously Hyperion that you saw at the end of the video essay kind of video. That's one of the reasons why I was a little bit hesitant to do this, is because I'm going to have to talk about all the characters' runes, and obviously Hyperion, you haven't really seen much of him yet. But yeah, he's the final boss, and my god, he is one of the most difficult final bosses in any game ever, but I love him for that reason. Anyway, so yeah, here are all 111 runes in the game. Well, all runes you can actually use normally. Again, that's where the ROM hacking comes in, because there's more than 111 in the files. In fact, they've numbered the textures for all the runes, and they go up to 163. Although in between there are a lot of ones that are missing, that have clearly been deleted to keep the file size down once they realised they weren't using them. But there are other unused ones which they missed when they got round to deleting them. So yeah. This is a tier list template that I made myself, so I put it out there so anyone else can use this tier list template now. You don't have to manually crop all these 111 images of the runes like I had to. Yeah, that took a bit. Anyway, you might notice there's a whole lot in not ranking already. That is because the game has a challenge mode, which is the bulk of its kind of post-game content, and half of the challenges unlock new runes. Only these runes can only be used in quick duels, which is essentially just where you pick an AI opponent, you pick a difficulty, and you play, and that's it. You just have one game. And as you can imagine, you very rarely play quick duels, you mostly just play the story mode. Now you might be like, why the hell did they make all these new runes that can only be used in quick duels? And you know what? I'm thinking the same thing. No, but seriously, I think that the developers expected that a lot more people would play the multiplayer, since in multiplayer you are allowed to use these runes, but as I mentioned, I've never found anyone else who knows how to play Doodle Hex to play multiplayer with, so I've never been able to use them in multiplayer. Anyway, so yeah, all these ones I'm not ranking for now, because a lot of these runes that are not allowed in the story mode vary wildly in power level. Like, any kind of semblance of them trying to keep the game balanced is thrown out the window the second you throw in these runes. Some of them are absolutely awful and borderline useless, whilst other ones are game-breaking, and you could easily destroy Hyperion if you could use them in the main story mode. So, yeah, big mixed bag over here. I don't want to touch this yet. Well, I say that, I've actually already posted a tier list of all runes in the Doodle Hex Discord server that I made a while ago. So I guess I have already put my opinion out there. I'm also not going to be copying that tier list. I'm going to see if my opinions hold up, because obviously I can't memorize where I put all 111 runes, so I'll see if my opinions are consistent, if after I make this tier list it looks very similar to the one I made only a few days ago. So yeah, I know it's a decent amount of preamble, but anyway, unfortunately I tried to see if I could get it so that the images that I upload for the template always appear in the same order, but it looks like I can't, I named all the files with like numbers before them when I uploaded them to Tier Maker, hoping that they would order themselves in a nice order, but they don't. So I've had to manually order these in the order that you would learn them if you were playing the game with every character on the character select left to right. You'll also notice that I am including all tiers of a rune that has multiple tiers, just in case people want to rank the different tiers separately, which I think I am going to do for this video. Speaking of which, again, another kind of benefit of having ROM hacked the game now is that I now know what these are internally called. These are referred to as the bronze, silver, and gold tier versions of these runes. So, yes. Anyway, I'll actually get a start on now. Starting with, well, I'm kind of going to rank both of these at once, because it's kind of impossible to talk about one of these without talking about the other. The small green rune and the medium-sized green rune that every single character learns at the start of the game. Well, straight away I'm going to put the small green rune in A tier, and the medium green rune in S tier. I don't think I need to explain that much. Like, don't get me wrong, they don't feel crazy busted or anything, but you gotta remember that's because everyone has it, and you don't ever really experience what it's like to not have it, because every character has both of these. If you ever go into a quick duel, I mentioned that you could learn all these new runes, but there's no slots left over. So the way that you fit in these new runes is you get to pick runes to swap out. If you try having a quick duel when you've swapped out both of these, you'll understand just how important these are to playing the game. I mean, you probably understand anyway, you use them literally all the time. You physically cannot hit your opponent with a curse, basically, at all, without using either the medium-sized green rune or the small-sized green rune. Generally, the medium-sized green rune is better, though. It's way more cost efficient in terms of damage. You only need to land one of them to break your opponent's shield enough to hit them with a curse that's like behind it. It's just generally more reliable. Because it's slower than the smallest green rune, it means you don't have to wait as much time between casting a curse and casting this to create a combo. Whereas you have to wait longer before you're able to cast the smaller green rune to create a combo, which means that essentially there's more of a delay, so you're more likely to get interrupted while trying to set up your combo by an enemy attack reaching you and you having to put up your shield and just give up on the combo you were working on. So yeah, honestly, I think this might just be the #1 rune in the game, which is kind of weird to think about because it doesn't feel all that flashy. I mean, it's literally just the medium green rune, but I can't imagine trying to play this game without the medium green rune. I don't think I would trade any rune for this. And I think that's why, like, it probably is the best rune in the game, even though it's not that flashy. Because even some of the most overpowered runes in the game, like Petalfall, like, I don't think I would like to give a character who doesn't have Petalfall if it meant that I had to lose this. It would depend on the character. There are one or two exceptions. There are a couple characters who have the blessing that can make any rune they want perfect so it can go through shields. Those characters can obviously use those spells to get through shields without needing to use green runes. So those characters, I wouldn't mind trading this for Petalfall. But those characters are Lopang and Nadia. And I don't know, is there any other ones? I mean, don't get me wrong, I know there's more characters that learn the perfect rune blessing. But I really think those are the only two that I feel really have the ability to use it a lot, since it does cost a lot of extra mana to use the perfect rune blessing instead of just doing a combo. So yeah, anyway, oh yeah, and while we're here, again, since I've been looking in the code, I can tell you that this costs 25% of your mana and this costs 40%, which just further shows why this is better generally than this one, even though they're both very important to your bread and butter gameplay, because in terms of the damage this does to their shield and the damage it does to them if they get hit, I think this does like triple the damage. I think this does 20 damage and this does 7. So this costing less than double of this, like only 15 more when this costs 25, while also doing like triple damage if it lands. Yeah, this is definitely the more efficient out of these two. Anyway, I know it's kind of went on a bit there. This might move a bit, but here comes one that's maybe a bit of a shocker, the small red rune, D tier. Now here's the thing, I didn't think of this rune as bad before, but when it came to actually ranking it, I kind of realised, wait, when do I actually use this rune? Like, I used to use it a lot more when I was newer to the game, so like I didn't really think about it until now. But the amount of damage this rune does for how much it costs is really inefficient. Now, don't get me wrong, this rune still finds its use. In the early levels of the game, this is literally the only rune you have that can get through an opponent's shield. If you don't do combos, of course. Which, I mean, you're going to do combos, but, like, if for whatever reason you're going against, I don't know, Rainbow, and she uses a Giant Blessing to make a shield giant, and she can just block your combos. If you go against someone like that, then your only hope is the red rune. Fair enough. But that is only at the very start of the game. The second you unlock the medium-sized red rune, which, to be honest, I should probably just rank that one now, since every character also learns that, although they all learn it at a different point in the game. Well, they don't all learn it at a different point in the game. Everyone learns it after their Silver Tower first battle, but except for Madrugada, who learns it right at the start. This one's also going in S tier. This just massively outclasses this. Whereas this, in this case, where we've got both the green and the small green, like the medium and small green, like, there's reasons to use both of them, even though the medium one is still better. Like, there's still a reason to use this one. It's faster, which means that it's got a different timing for combos, so maybe you plan to do a combo with a medium green rune, but then you lost your time window to do that, because you had to block something, so instead you do a combo with this. In this case, because these don't do any damage to shields, you don't have that situation. This rune right here is just factually less damage for mana efficient than this rune. And you always are going to get both of these runes with every character in the game, so why wouldn't you use this one? Now, there is basically only one answer for that, and that is that essentially you might use this one just because it is, while still very slow, slightly faster than this one. Maybe you're in a situation where your opponent's like one hit from death and you just need to kill them ASAP. In that case, yes, you would cast this, but that's a very narrow use case. Other than that, this is always better. Now, honestly, there is an argument to put this maybe even in F tier, with like how rarely that is useful, but I did mention, I think I do have to count the fact that it is still useful at the beginning of the game. I think that if your first Silver Tower fight was Rainbow, you would be screwed if you didn't have this rune. And as I say, it's mostly the fact that this rune exists that makes me rank this so lowly. I think if this rune did not exist, this would actually rank a decent amount higher, maybe even as high as B tier. So I'll put it in D tier for now. And the final rune that everyone gets, the Shield Breaking Curse. This is an interesting one. You see, it seems kind of boring at first. Every character gets it. It's one of the more basic curses. It just makes it so they can't shield for a few seconds. But I honestly mostly just never used this rune in the past, like, besides the first couple fights. But then I started trying to use it more, because I noticed I never used it, and I got really mixed results. Sometimes it felt awful, and sometimes it felt really good, almost like I should have been using it the whole time, and now I was, like, dumb to not have been using it. And I couldn't really figure out what it was about this rune. Like, again, half the time it felt overpowered, and half the time it felt useless. And I think I've finally figured out what's going on here. Well, I mean, I say finally, it didn't take that long, but like still. I had to play with it for a while before I got a feel for it. I think this rune is slap in the middle of C tier, but it's a weird one where I understand if you disagree, because I think it's simply true that when this rune works, it's bordering on S tier. The problem is getting this rune to work. It's very greedy to go for this rune, basically. Because, don't get me wrong, it's almost always worth the mana to force your opponent's shield to be broken, and then capitalize on that broken shield, attacking them with as much stuff they otherwise could have blocked as possible. It's definitely worth the mana. The problem is just how much uninterrupted time you need to be able to set this up. You need to spend 50% of your mana to cast this in the first place, then 40% of your mana to cast this once this reaches the first combo dot, so that you break their shield and they actually get hit by this curse. And then behind that, you have to spam as many runes as you can to capitalize on the shield being broken, because it only lasts like 4 or 5 seconds. And during that whole massive chunk of time, you have to hope you don't get interrupted by any attack coming at you from the left side that you need to put up your shield and block. And if you do at any point, then there goes your combo. So, yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is, I think this rune is almost useless once you get to the final duel of the Silver Tower. Once you unlock the Super Shield and you're able to block perfect runes and stuff like that, I don't think there's any situation where you should be going for this, for the most part. Because once you get to that point, all that's going to happen is you're going to clump all your resources in this one massive chunk where you're banking on the opponent not having their shield up, and then they'll just super shield it all, and you'll get massively punished for it. Now, I say that, if you are in a situation where you know your opponent's super shield is down, they didn't have enough time to recharge it yet, and it's just convenient right now, you can go for a big attack, then you can capitalize with this. And by the end of the game, if you do get something off with this, it can be almost game-winning on the spot. But yeah, this is one of those ones where it's too greedy for me to be able to put it any higher than C, even though when it pops off, it's honestly pushing S tier. Anyway, those are all the basic runes that everyone gets. Time to get to the character-specific ones, and of course, again, we're going to go in order, starting with Faye. Petalfall, where we were just talking about this one. Petalfall is absolutely one of the best runes in the entire game. It's going in S tier, in between these two. So, I actually originally thought that I was going to have Petalfall as the best rune in the entire game when I first had the idea to make this tier list, until I realised just how important, like, the medium green rune is to playing the game, and, you know, actually I couldn't put it higher than this. But I think this is going to end up being second. So, as a reminder, this blessing costs, I think it was 60% of your mana, and you cast it, and it simply deletes whatever rune is closest to hitting you right now on the opponent's side. And it does not matter if that rune is perfect, it does not matter if that rune is transparent, it does not matter if that rune is huge, it doesn't matter if it costs the opponent all their mana, you can just delete it instantly, on the spot, gone. That is really good. I don't think I have to explain that. In fact, one thing that I found interesting is, again, when I was looking through the files of this game, I found out that Petalfall is internally called self-sacrifice. And that kind of made sense, but I thought it was a little bit weird they called it that at first, until I managed to look into the code and find out that originally this was planned to be an ability which hurt yourself to use, which kind of makes sense. I'm kind of surprised they removed that, because that would have balanced it out a bit. However, what's even scarier is, it looks like it was also coded at one point to remove more than one rune, so that was also probably why it originally had self-damage on it. Yeah, very strong rune. Very, very strong. I really can't say much. It's just, when you know, this game is built on combos, and a lot of combos require every rune in the combo to work, even if they become basically unblockable without the super shield if you don't have all those runes combined. So a lot of combos, you can remove one single rune, and the whole combo can just be blocked now, and you can take, like, no damage. You can see why this becomes very useful in that case, of course. Yes, the opponent can just spam small green runes to block your Petalfall so that you can't get, like, massive value off of it, but even still, that's really rough having to do that. You waste a lot of mana and time doing that, and of course, it's something you can always play around with good timing, so yeah, Petalfall, absolutely one of the best runes in the game. And of course, I mentioned Faye's one of the best characters in the game, so not much of a surprise that straight after the second best rune in the game, we get another one of the best runes of the game, the Enlargement Blessing, or as it's called internally, the Spell Power Blessing. The reason why I'm not referring to these by their normal names, if you're wondering, is because, annoyingly, I will admit, this is one thing I don't like about the game. If multiple characters learn the same spell, it's not the same name for every character. Every character has their own unique name and description for, like, each spell, even if it does the exact same thing, which is kind of annoying. Like, I think, like, this is, like, Acidic Blast for one character, and then it's, like, Vampiric Blast for another character, and, like, Scream Blast or something for another character. It's like, you know, I don't want to call it that, because, you know, it's just confusing. So, yeah, I'm just giving them kind of my own names, or using their internal names in code. So, yeah, this blessing is crazy good. Essentially, this just makes all your runes bigger, which sounds very basic, but I think this doubles the damage they deal, if I remember right. And double damage is a lot of extra damage. It really is. There are literally some points. I remember when I was replaying the game recently, as Faye, I managed to literally beat her third Bronze Tower fight. Now, fair enough, this is the Bronze Tower, but hear me out. I beat her third Bronze Tower fight against the Jinn in one combo. As in, literally, I just did one shield break combo and killed them from full health instantly using this. So yeah, double damage is a lot. It really is quite a significant bonus, and honestly, this rune is easy to draw and not very expensive as well. But the best part is, the fact that it makes all your runes bigger doesn't just increase their damage. It doesn't just increase their shield damage either. It also makes it, since the runes are physically bigger, the opponent's shield has to be bigger to block it, even if it's the super shield. This is where this rune gets really good, is it's one of the only ways you can get through an opponent using the super shield. If you can time it so that you make your runes giant the second before they hit the opponent, most AIs will not know to shield preemptively. Sometimes they will, sometimes they'll play it safe, but a lot of the time they won't. And they'll start shielding at the latest possible moment, thinking that you can't make them bigger, and then you last second make them bigger, and again, even with the super shield, although it can block anything, it still has to be bigger than whatever it's trying to block to be able to block it. And it takes time for it to grow to full size. So, yeah, you can get massive damage through last minute with this, and get around almost anything using it with good timing. And again, it's good cost for that effect, and on top of that, kills super fast. So, definitely one of the best ones in the game. However, there's two variations of it. That's the bronze version. There's also the silver and the gold version. I'm not putting them in this tier, I'm just moving them up. So you might be like, oh, okay, are these versions any better? I mean, this is the gold version, that sounds better. No, these versions aren't as good. I will say the silver version isn't much worse. It costs a little bit more, and obviously it takes a little bit longer to draw, but this one isn't too bad. Probably put it there. This one, though, the gold version, this one's really pricey. It costs almost all your mana, and again, the only benefit you get for these longer and more expensive versions is the same effect, but for a longer duration. And to be honest, it's already rare that this isn't already long enough for what you want. And by the time you're at the silver tier, this lasts as long as you're ever going to need it. I don't think I have ever needed it to last longer than this one makes it last. So this one making it last even longer for even more mana is just useless in my opinion. It's much harder to draw. It doesn't look like it, but I've noticed this one's actually kind of picky. So yeah, this one's much harder to draw. And as well as that, as I say, it costs so much mana. It's very hard, especially because I mentioned the timing on this is very important if you want to get through opponent's shields with it. Having it be so restrictive that you can barely have any mana like spent without being able, while still being able to afford this, and that all you get is that its effect is longer and that it's so awkward to draw quickly. Yeah, this might be B, this might be C. I'll have to see how the rest of the tier list looks as I build it. There's then is this our first curse besides this one? Yeah, this is our first character exclusive curse. Tangle Vines. Although no one calls it that, this is just the pause curse to most people. Yeah, this one is, So this is a bit of a weird one. Generally, I do think that curses, on average, are some of the weakest runes in the game. But the thing is that this one's a pretty good curse. It pauses all runes on the opponent's track in place for 3.5 seconds, and also completely disables them from being able to draw any new ones while that happens. Gives you a nice time to have a breather. The thing that makes this hard to judge is that this is one of the easiest runes in the game to draw perfectly, and that's kind of awkward because I kind of don't want to factor in drawing perfect runes, because most people can't draw most runes in the game perfectly, even if they draw them slowly. Including me, even though I've played this game a hell of a lot, most of the runes in the game I can't draw perfectly, except by pure dumb luck. So I really don't want to rely on, oh, this rune is good because you can draw it perfectly. But in fairness, this might be the single easiest rune in the game to draw perfectly. So it's like... So again, when you draw a rune perfectly, it will make it so that it's completely unblockable by normal means. They have to use the super shield to block it. Which is why this curse is so good, is because you can spam it and the opponent has to use the super shield to deal with it, or their runes get stalled for ages. And it's super cheap as well, this curse, so you really can spam it if you're able to draw it perfectly. But that kind of feels like cheating. Oh boy. And it's kind of opening a bit of a dangerous door, because if you had a player who was just that good and could just draw every single rune in the game perfectly, then there's a whole bunch of other runes that realistically are really bad that you could call really good if you could just draw them perfectly every time. I think I will put this in B tier though, just knowing that this is a uniquely easy rune to draw perfectly. I don't know why either, because looking at it, I wouldn't have thought it'd be so easy to draw perfectly. And I don't remember the accuracy values they had for like the threshold for what counts as perfect for this room being particularly low, if I remember right. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Anyway, then there's the Screen Shake Curse, which is another one with 3 tiers, because multiple characters get it. Faye gets the bronze version. I think I'm gonna do this. Okay, so this is another one where the version you get matters a little bit. The bronze version is okay. It's cheap, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a fan of this curse. So, I mean, of course I put it really low. What it does is it obviously shakes the opponent's screen when they get hit with this curse. And while it's shaking, it's almost impossible for them to draw any runes. But the thing is, it doesn't last very long, so it's certainly not very useful in traditionally just disabling your opponent compared to other runes that can do that. I mean, you literally just learned this curse. This massively outclasses this one. But then to compensate for that, they also made it so it does deal some damage when it hits. And yeah, I like that they did that, but again, why would I not just cast this? Or this, you know? Again, that's more mana efficient for damage. But also, it does make the opponent lose some mana as well. It's a bit, like, spread thin. It's kind of doing a lot of things, but not doing any of them really very well. So, yeah, I don't even think the mana reduction is that relevant, considering they can't draw any runes for the next couple seconds anyway. So, it's not like they're likely to be able to spend that mana. Don't get me wrong, it is possible to still draw a rune while the screen is shaking, but it's really hard. I put this one in E tier, even if it's the top of E tier, because the smallest version of this curse shakes the screen the most gently, as you could imagine. And with this one, this is the only one where the screen shake is gentle enough that I can actually pretty consistently still draw at least simple runes while the screen is shaking. This one, the second tier or silver tier one, is probably the best version. It's still easy to draw, it's still pretty cheap. It shakes the screen violently enough that you basically can't draw any runes while it's happening. It lasts a little bit longer, it does a bit more damage. It's still not great, but it's better than the bronze version, and it's definitely better than the gold version. The gold version does shake the screen for a good amount longer, and it does shake it way more violently, and it does do more damage. And it is basically impossible to draw anything while the screen is shaking with the gold version. Because you just tap the screen, and the entire drawing board is just covered in lines. So, whereas with the other ones, if you can kind of get a feel for the shaking and get used to it, you can kind of almost adapt to it and actually draw a little bit with the shaking. This one, I don't... maybe I just need to get good, but I don't think you can even draw at all while this one is shaking the screen that fast and that aggressively. But still, this one is super awkward to draw. You have to be very specific with this bottom line, otherwise it won't like it. And considering this is already a very, very low tier kind of curse that you are very rarely going to use, it really is the last nail in the coffin that not only is this going to have not that much benefit, and not only is it kind of spread between doing a lot of things but not doing any of them particularly well, but now you've got one that actually costs a decent amount of your mana and also is actually quite difficult to draw. Yeah, that's why that's the worst version. Anyway, there is the Barrier Blessing, which Faye learns this gold version, the stronger version, but there's also this bronze version. Now you might be wondering, where's the silver version? Well, the silver version is coded and even has a texture, however, it is not used in the game. That's another one of those kind of things that I've been working on with my ROM hacking. I've managed to force load it into the game to prove that it is there. Yeah, it's been pretty cool kind of discovering all these new runes that are literally just in the code, but you just can't access them normally. Anyway, by the way, if you're curious, the silver version is actually really similar to the gold version. It's this, basically, except without the flick at the end. It's basically the same thing as this. Anyway, so this blessing puts up a barrier which absorbs the next so many points of damage that you take. And the reason why that's effective, even though that might sound a little bit meh, considering it's not that much damage, is because it can absorb even unblockable damage. So you can fully block red runes by using these, which is useful. Now, the bronze version, don't get me wrong, is pretty good, but it doesn't block a whole lot of damage. The gold version, though, can tank even pretty sizable attacks without you even having to put up your shield. Now, it's either going to be top of A or bottom of S. It's kind of difficult. But for now, I'm going to put it at the bottom of S and see where things end up. And then, finally, we have the green kind of curse. The curse that gets larger for every green rune on the screen. Or mandatory mope, as its in-game name is. This curse is a bit of a weird one. I remember when I first saw this curse, I was kind of like, what? Wait, what? What, you get to use this? Because this is kind of similar to one of Hyperion's curses, one that gets bigger for every red rune on the screen. And that's one of the most overpowered curses to deal with when you're fighting Hyperion. And I was like, oh my god, I know this isn't the same, it's green runes instead of red runes, but my god, that sounds scary. But then I was kind of disappointed. This rune is in the same position, basically, as the Shieldbreaker rune, because it's got the same problem. It's technically really strong if it lands, but it's just way too greedy. First of all, of course, it is still a curse. You've got to find a way to break your opponent's shield so they actually get hit by it. But, in fairness, because this curse is going to be huge with all the green runes you're casting, you don't have to do very much shield damage at all to be able to get it through. So, yeah, I suppose that's not too much of a tall order. Fair enough. But then, as well as that, looking into the actual code of the game, compared to the red rune curse, this curse does not get that much extra damage for every green rune on the screen. You have to cast a lot of green runes to actually get a lot of damage off of this. Now, don't get me wrong, if you do have a lot of green runes on the screen, this is one of those things where it can take like half the opponent's health bar in one hit, which is obviously a lot of damage. But then they just super shield if it gets that big. And it's like, okay, but then I can just, you know, make sure it doesn't get super shielded because I can wait until they use their super shield and then go for this. But it's like, okay, can you guarantee that at the point at which their super shield is down, before it recharges, you can cast this, cast the green rune combo needed to break their shield so they get hit by it, and then spam enough green runes behind it that it gets big enough to actually deal a sizable amount of damage, and at no point during that do you get interrupted by attacks coming in from the left side. Are you really going to bank on that happening late in the game? Because this is one of the last runes you learn as well. You can only use it in the last few fights. So, yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. It sounds so powerful, but in practice it's just too greedy. So I think I'm happy putting it at C, just below the Shieldbreaker curse again. It's got the exact same problem. It does so well when it actually lands, but it's just too greedy. And finally, the last rune that Faye learns is the Mana Sink Blessing, which is the internal name for it, or Magic Sink is the internal name technically, but Mana Sink. I'm going to call it that because what I was calling it before I knew its internal name was the Blocking Gives You Mana Blessing, which is, yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful. Yeah, Blocking Gives You Mana, that's what it does with this. I'm going to probably rank them like that. I actually have no idea where I put these when I ranked them earlier. It's really hard judging these. I used to think these sucked, but the longer I've played the game, the more useful they've been to me. You can gain a lot of mana from these, obviously, again, from blocking attacks while the effect is active. Other fun fact, this is the bronze version and this is the silver version. And there is a gold version once again, but it's simply not used in the game. Unfortunately, I couldn't force load sorry, did I say bronze version? I meant gold version. Unfortunately, even though it seems to be literally coded, I can't force load the gold version because the texture for the gold version has been deleted, so trying to load the gold version crashes the game. Might be able to do something like that in future, but yeah. Once again, this just makes the effect longer when you cast the bigger version. I definitely think the longer version is better, because an effect like this is kind of annoying to have to constantly refresh. And don't get me wrong, this is quite quick to draw and very cheap. But this is still not expensive, and while not necessarily quick to draw, it's not exactly super difficult either. And for that, if I remember right, this lasts twice as long. I think this lasted 6 seconds, and this lasts 12 seconds. This is a really long time, and I really appreciate that. It's so much nicer to not have to constantly refresh it by spamming this, and instead just have to cast this once every now and then, whenever you get a breather, and get more than your mana's worth back. Yeah, I think these... I didn't really realise how important it was until recently, but I think every character in the game really needs some way to get bonus mana. unless they've just got generally really good runes in their like set of runes anyway. It's kind of an important thing that every character needs is some way to gain bonus mana for them to be good. So yeah, that's probably why I put them this high, is that this is one of those methods of gaining bonus mana that is almost required for a character to be good. So yeah. Anyway, that's all of phase runes. We now got strats. Straight away, of course, Strat is most known for his speed, so of course he's going to have the speed up rune. I'm going to put it here. So the speed up rune fills the same role as the enlargement rune, but it just doesn't quite do as good a job. But don't get me wrong, it's still really good. Especially this bronze version of it is extremely cheap. It literally costs less than this. And it's really easy to draw. I know that this looks like 1, 2, 3 hand motions, but if you curve your hand a bit as you're drawing it, you can still get away with it. You know, it's still accurate enough to read, and you can just do it in one hand motion. Which obviously makes it so that it's really easy to just cast this whenever you want. And that's really important for such a timing-dependent effect, because obviously a speed boost, you really got to have the right timing for it to be effective. So yeah, this is very, very important. It can help you get through super shields. It can help you have bursts of enormous damage by rushing down the opponent before their shield can regenerate. You can spam green runes at your opponent to just obliterate them with the speed boost. You can get some really quick kills this way. The only reason why it's not as good as this is because you really got to commit a lot more to the speed boost, and there's a lot more ways they can counter the speed boost. Like, if they have a blessing which helps their shield regenerate faster, they can counter it with this, whereas with this, that might not work if your runes are tightly packed close, like, together enough. The extra size might just make it so that they can't even block, like, the runes, because they're just so big, and they have to have a maxed out shield to be able to block them, and if they're packed tightly together and huge, then yeah, they might get through. With a speed boost, it's a bit more counterable, as I say, and of course it doesn't amplify the damage of the runes, it just makes them come at your opponent faster, so they're less likely to block them, which means that they also are it's more easy to deal with what comes at you with the speed boost with just barriers like this. So that's why it's not as good as the enlargement, but it definitely fills the same role, and the enlargement, at the moment, I've got it third best out of all the ones who've ranked so far. So don't get me wrong, that's not to say this is bad at all. This is definitely one of the better runes in the game. Then there's the silver version, which only Cassie learns, and you might have noticed that you might have expected some of these runes that have the same effect, but just different sizes, would be really close together. And that is the case for some of them. Of course, these are right next to each other. But other ones have big gaps between them, like this one and this one. Or especially this one and this one. The speed one is probably the most extreme example of a blessing, which is so much worse the longer it gets. Most of them get worse when they get longer. Some of them get better when they get longer. It depends on the effect. This one gets so much worse, because the timing is super important, and the second you add this extra line right here, you can no longer cast it in one hand motion. What's even worse is, I didn't realize how much of a massive, like, sharp mana cost increase the speed boost gets the second it goes up one tier. If I remember right, while this costs 20% of your mana, this costs half of your mana. It might have even been more than half, it might have been 60%. It costs a lot either way, and that's weird, because this is literally just the same effect, except it lasts longer. Except the fact it lasts longer is actually bad, as I mentioned in my last video, because with the speed boost is longer, it means you have to wait longer before you can start your next combo, because you'll catch the tail end of the speed boost before it wears off, and it'll put everything out of position and break your own combo. So, yeah, and it only gets worse with the gold version. Honestly, even though the original speed boost blessing is one of the best runes in the game, I think that the gold version of the speed boost blessing is probably the single worst blessing in the entire game. Well, okay, there's tough competition there. If we include custom runes, some of these, even though a lot of these are really powerful, some of these are garbage. If we don't include these, which I mean I'm not ranking them, so I'm not going to, yeah, this is almost definitely the worst blessing in the entire game. I have no problem saying that. It's awful. Well, anyway. The next rune you learn is another speed boost rune, only this one is exclusive to Strat and has no other versions. This one, I think it was called Finger Blur in the actual game. I don't remember what its internal name is. I think it was another thing just to do with speed. So I think I will just call this one Finger Blur since it's exclusive to Strat, so there's not any other name for it anyway. This one will make the next rune you cast triple the speed. Oh yeah, by the way, I looked inside the code. The speed boost ratio for this is 2.55. So this speed boost increase is a little bit more than this one. I think I put this rune here. So I used to think this one was garbage compared to this. And don't get me wrong, I would say that this is the better of the two blessings, but they're both very comparable in strength, I think. It's really convenient to be able to, like, if you mess up a combo, be able to have the combo almost at your opponent, but because you have a triple speed rune, you can send it last minute and, like, fix your broken combo. It's really convenient to be able to do that. It's really convenient to be able to stack multiple greens on top of each other by, for example, casting 3 medium-sized green runes in a row, and then as it gets closer to your opponent, cast a triple speed medium-sized green rune at the front of the 3 that you've already casted, and then a triple speed medium-sized green rune at the back, and then speed boost to hit them with 5 of these stacked on top of each other, going at, like, ridiculous breakneck speeds. That is a very powerful, although greedy, very importantly to note, very greedy combo. So yeah, just got a lot of utility here. If you're ever getting stuck in a situation, which, by the way, is actually kind of surprisingly common in this game, where you need to hit your opponent to kill them as fast as possible, like, you're about to be hit with something that you just can't survive, and the only way you can win is if you finish off your opponent before you get hit by this incoming attack. Obviously, it's really clutch to be able to have something that can just send something at your opponent at breakneck speeds. Especially, even more, like, I just realized I should have mentioned this first, even more kind of applicable than that situation is a situation where you're getting hit with an attack which you could block if your opponent had a certain curse, like this curse, which we're going to get to in a moment, on them, which would make it easier to block the incoming attack, and, you know, but it won't reach them in time. Then you triple its speed and you send it at them, and yeah, it will reach them in time now. Anyway, so yeah, there's this curse, the slowdown curse, that puts your opponent in slow motion. Strat gets the bronze version, but there's also a silver version, and there is a gold version programmed into the game with a texture too, and it's simply just unused. Well, okay, that's a bit of a stretch. It's technically used, but it's so, like, rare to actually see it in the game. It's such a small circumstance that it's basically unused. It's used, as far as I'm aware, in one challenge, but not one where you can actually cast it. It's one where the AI has it in their grimoire, and I've only seen them cast it once in that challenge. And when I first saw it, I thought I was seeing things, because it zips by super fast in that challenge. It in that challenge, the opponent's runes move super fast. And when I first saw it, I thought I was seeing things. But then when I actually, like, hacked in the gold rune version of this rune, I realized it was that rune that zipped past me that I was like, wait, I've never seen that before. What the fuck is that? So yeah, anyway. This curse is a weird one. I might be inclined to rank this more highly, even though most curses are ranked more low. The slow motion curse makes the opponent's runes move at half the speed, and it makes them gain mana at less than half the speed, 0.4 times if I remember correctly. It's really useful because that massively cripples the opponent's mana gain, while also making it super easy to block what's coming towards you. And the bronze version of this curse is actually, for some reason, really cheap, which is kind of surprising because this is not a very small effect for a curse. There are other curses that are more expensive that have much weaker effects. So, yeah, damn, am I actually going to put this, like... I think I'm putting it, like, that high. I do think this curse gets worse the higher tier you get in terms of the versions of it. The silver version is definitely the worst. Still think it goes here, though, probably. The silver version is only learned by Caleb. Well, Madrugada can learn it too, but it's as a challenge mode rune that she can't use in the main mode. So she basically doesn't learn it. But yeah, this is only learned by Caleb. If the gold version was on this list, which at the time I made this tier list template, I hadn't yet found the gold version in the files, so I didn't put it in. And again, it's technically unused anyway. Then I would actually probably put it above the silver one, even though it would still put it below the bronze one. Because the gold one is annoyingly difficult to draw, and it is, you know, even more expensive and all that. But in fairness, it does have one other benefit that you don't usually see with higher tier versions of the same curse. The gold one is physically bigger than these two curses, which means that it's easier to hit through shields. So that's nice. Anyway. Then there are the... Well, internally these are called the Mana Return Blessings. This is the silver version and this is the gold version. There is a bronze version in the game. Got a texture, fully coded, and it's just not in the game. Well, not used in the game. Again, that's another one I've hacked in, which is a shame because the bronze version is my favourite version. Now I've been able to play with it, I'm like, damn, I wish it was like this normally. But anyway, Strat gets the silver version. Oh boy, if this isn't a... This is definitely a very B/A tier kind of... I'll give it bottom of A. Okay, this is an awkward one. So this is extremely powerful when it works. It's kind of like these, but slightly better because it's less goes wrong if you don't get your way. But it's still not good if this doesn't like get what you want. So as I say, this blessing makes it so temporarily you gain mana for dealing damage, and you do gain a lot of mana from it. You do get a lot of mana. You get more than your like money's worth back if you cast this. And then you hit your opponent with something. You really just have to hit them with like one medium-sized attack to get more than what you paid back, which is really nice. The only thing is, well, okay, not the only thing, a few things. One, obviously timing dependent. That doesn't sound too bad, but then two, this is actually not very cheap, so it's kind of awkward trying to find the right timing to afford this while still blocking, and then also get the mana from hitting your opponent by, using it at the right time. But then the final nail in the coffin. This looks easy to draw, doesn't it? Unfortunately, this is actually kind of awkward. Not the hardest one in the game or anything, but it's way harder to draw than you'd think, because it has a high threshold for accuracy in the code. Like, you have to be pretty accurate for it to count as recognized as this rune. And as well as that, with all these other runes, if you've got like a square corner or whatever, if you curve it a bit, it doesn't matter. It still, like, can figure out what you drew. You just won't get a perfect. With this one, you have to draw this with the rigid square edges, otherwise it won't know what you're drawing. If you just curve these corners a little bit, it doesn't even know what you're drawing. So, yeah, that's kind of frustrating, because it means that instead of being able to cast this in potentially even just one hand motion, if you drew it a little bit curved, no, it won't recognize it if you do it that way. You got to draw it in 4 hand motions. It's like, And especially if you get the gold version, then it's 6 hand motions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, you've really got to, like, count out those hand motions. You can't just, like, rush and skip through them. Because, as I say, if you do that, you'll curve it. And if it's just the teeniest bit curved, it's just like, nope, not having that. And that really sucks for a rune that's, again, so expensive, so timing dependent. You need to get it right in that moment. Yeah, this is why I'm so sad the bronze version isn't in the game, because the bronze version cuts out this bottom line. And cutting out that bottom line and having a lower accuracy threshold means that you actually can curve the corners and it'll still recognize it, and as well as that, it's really short. It's literally just down, left, down, done. And as well as that, it's the cheapest of all of these. I think it only costs like a third of your mana, and this one costs like 3/4 of your mana. So... yeah, the bronze version, even though it's obviously the one with the shortest effect, is by far the best of these, and it's a shame it's unused. Strat gets the silver version, as I mentioned. I never actually used it that much back when I played Strat, but honestly, maybe I should have, because the silver version is definitely better than the gold version, and again, when this does pop off, it's really powerful. You get a ton of mana off of this. It's just, again, finding the window to cast this while blocking your opponent's attacks, while also getting enough mana for it, while not compromising on your own attacks, casting it just before you hit them with an attack. Yeah, there's a lot of ifs and caveats, but yeah. Anyway, is that... yeah, we got a couple more for Strat. We got this curse, which internally is called Mad, but I'm just going to call it the Bomb Curse. So, this curse hurts yourself to cast, because it's that powerful. And if it hits the opponent, it'll do enormous damage to them. How much damage? If I remember right, it's 60. To put it in perspective, the largest rune in the game, like, largest just red rune, this guy, does 70 damage if it hits you. So this is does just a little bit less than the giant red rune in the game. So, yeah. This one, I'm going to put... here. So, here's the thing. This is a lot of damage. This is still a pretty good rune. It's another one of those things just like this one and this one where it's just a bit greedy. But I will say, it's not quite as bad as these. Pardon me. Because Strat gets way more stuff to be able to get this through a shield. So, yeah, this is this is slightly better than those two. And, like... as well as that, with these, you have to commit more. Like, you can't just cast this and hit them with the shield break and that's done, you know. Instead, you've got to cast this and then cast more stuff behind it. And with this one, you've got to cast this and cast more greens behind it. This one, you've just got to land it. You do have to commit some health, but that's about it. So yeah, definitely better than these two, but not the best case. Oh yeah, you might have seen my strat gameplay. I was using this a lot. Honestly, part of that is I just cannot play strat on a mouse. Like, the rest of them, I've adapted to playing on a mouse for the most part. I'm basically used to it. Strat, I cannot draw fast enough. I mean, he's all about speed, as I mentioned, so trying to play a character that's all about speed and tightly packing together green runes to do combos to deal enormous amounts of damage when you speed boost them, no, I can't draw these that fast on a mouse. On a stylus, I can do it. As I say, Strat used to be my favourite character when I was younger, so, you know, I could do it on a stylus, but on a mouse, I just can't draw fast enough, which is why I resorted to kind of spamming this curse and this curse. I don't think that's the best way to play Strat, but I just can't play him the quote-unquote proper way on a mouse. Anyway, and finally, Strat gets the gold perfect blessing. I don't know why I pronounced it perfect blessing. So that's the bronze, this is the silver, that's the gold. So I'm not gonna lie, I thought there was actually no difference except length between each of these perfect blessings. And I didn't actually notice that this is actually the only case in the entire game where the longer it is, the cheaper it is. If I remember right, well, I remember for certain this version costs 50% of your mana. This version costs, I think 40%, and this costs 30%, if I remember right. So that's the benefit, is that you draw it for longer and you get a reduction in price. That is not worth it, because... Okay, I think it could be worth it on this one, potentially, but... Okay, here's the problem. So... This one, yeah, 50% of your mana is a little bit expensive, but it's nice and easy to draw. This is definitely the best one. This one could have been useful if it weren't for two problems. Because this is still not that long, this version. But there are two problems. One, for some reason, the amount of accuracy you need for it to count as like, you've drawn this correctly is really, really high on this version specifically. I thought I was, like, losing my mind when I was coming back to playing Nadia, the only character who learns this version, and I was constantly failing to draw this. And I'm like, I swear, I'm drawing it dead on. How is it, like, you know, not liking this? And again, when I looked through the code, if I remember right, the pass accuracy, the pass threshold was you need to be 84% accurate for it to even recognize what you're drawing. Most of them, it's just above, like, 75% accuracy. This one is nearly 85% needed. There are some runes that, like... To give an example, a lot of runes, their threshold for what counts as a perfect is around, like, 93% to 95% for a lot of them. For the more simple ones, it's more like 98 or 97, but for the more complicated ones, a lot of them are around, like, 93, 94, 95% is, like, the threshold for accuracy to make it perfect. So the fact that this is 85 just to even recognize what you're drawing is stupid. And the other thing is, I mentioned the only character who learns this version is Nadia. And Nadia already has a mana regeneration blessing, which kind of makes it obsolete that this is cheaper to be harder to draw. She'd much rather have the more expensive version because she can actually afford it. So, yeah. This could be more useful on a character that struggles for mana more. But on Nadia, it's not it. Anyway, that's a bit long-winded. This is a bit awkward, because I'm not going to lie, I would like to try and rank these without considering what characters they're tied to. Just imagine if you could create a character with any set of runes you want, like, yeah, like, how good would these be? But that makes it a bit difficult, because then there are some runes which, of course, you can only use with one character, so I couldn't tell you what it's like playing them with another character. So, like, part of me wants to say, actually, I should put this silver version higher, because it's part of the reason why it's bad is just because it's on Nadia, and she doesn't need it, but, like, nah. Okay, so, I'll do this. This version, the bronze version, definitely S tier. On command, being able to make anything you want perfect, yeah, I'll put it there. Just being able to decide, oh, actually, I'll put it there. Nah, actually, I still think this is, ooh, I still think that's better. On command, being able to make anything you want unblockable without the super shield is just really good. Even if it costs half your mana, just, oh, I've decided you can't block this now. It's like, yeah, that's pretty good. Oh yeah, I just realized I didn't even mention, when I was looking through the code of the game, I found out that, well, I was actually almost partially not surprised this was the case, but I found out that these different peers used to do something completely different. It used to be that this version would give you 2 perfect, and this would give you 3. And I actually kind of wish it was still like that. Now, I say that, I imagine the reason why they changed that is because it would probably be overpowered to get 3 perfect runes for one, like, cast of this. But having said that, you're probably going to have all those runes packed together, and the only way you can counter perfect runes anyway is the super shield. So I almost think it wouldn't be that OP. I'll put it this way, I think 3 is probably OP, but I think 2 perfect runes for drawing something this this awkward, and imagine it didn't cost 30%, it cost 50% just like this one. I think that's fine. I feel like they should have done that. That would have been cool. It'd be more interesting than just them costing less. But yeah, anyway, I get a bit sidetracked. Yeah, I think I'll put that there. This one, okay, again, if its accuracy threshold was actually reasonable, honestly, I'd put it here. I would say it's better than the original. But the fact that this has such a stupidly high accuracy threshold means that I think I have to put it here. I think it really knocks it down. And sadly, I think I would also put this above the silver. That accuracy threshold hurts. And yes, the gold version has a lower accuracy threshold than the silver version for some reason. So yeah, don't get me wrong, this still isn't easy to draw, but literally, and this actually does make sense, because I did feel like this one was easier to draw, but I thought maybe it's just my gut feeling, maybe it's just what it feels like. No, literally, this is actually easier to draw than this, because of the accuracy threshold. Anyway, so yeah, this is the version Strat gets, but yeah, very cheap, but I would rather have the one that's easier to draw, but it's not terrible that you get to make anything you want perfect for such a cheap price. Oh, I got a bit swept up in that. Alright, Cassie. The curse that turns people into a pig. Now, you're probably expecting this to go quite high for a curse, at least, because, you know, curses... as far as curses go, these are some of the most kind of interesting. I think that most people, like... When I was newer to this game, I thought that the pig and the frog curse were the best curses in the game. Honestly, my opinion has changed over time. I would probably put it there. And that almost feels too low, but I think that's actually where I want to put it. So, don't get me wrong, this curse definitely has its upsides. It's a very big curse, which means you don't have to do much shield damage to get it through. And it kind of does multiple things at once. It simultaneously sort of disables your opponent. They can still cast small red runes, but they can't cast anything else. While also making their shield super weak. It grows at 0.4 times the speed while they're a pig, which makes it really hard for them to block anything. So it kind of does 2 things at once. It makes them vulnerable to attacks that are much weaker, but still now they actually can't block them. And it also makes it so they're less able to do anything to hurt you, which sounds pretty good to have both of those things on a curse that's pretty huge. But I think the problem is just... I think you, a lot of the time, would rather have a curse that's all in on one of those things, rather than a curse that does a little bit of both. I think you'd rather have a curse that either completely disables what your opponent's doing, or a curse that does something to your opponent that makes them really vulnerable. I don't think you really want a curse that kind of does a bit of both. Because it's kind of hard to capitalize on both at the same time. That being said, this curse is still definitely one of the better curses in the game. It's... I might rearrange some of these a little bit. I might put this up here. And this... Yeah, I'll put this at the bottom of B tier, and... yeah, that feels more right. I'd do that. Yeah, so I think I'm happy with that. Yeah, so... I think it's the more useful side is actually not the disabling side, because it doesn't last that long, and it's actually quite a committal thing to try and land this curse, because it's not actually very cheap. And don't get me wrong, this is one of those ones that's not hard to draw, but you can't draw it fast if you want to draw it correctly. So, while I rarely misdraw this, I can't draw it fast, and if I try to, I will almost always not get it, like it won't draw correctly. So, it's a decent time commitment and a decent mana commitment compared to most curses, which are relatively cheap. So yeah, I think that's enough to kind of knock it down for me a bit. There is the mini curses, which I kind of hate how often characters get this curse, because it kind of sucks. So, as I say, there's a bronze, silver, and gold version of this curse. Well, Cassie does get the gold version, which is probably... I'm going to say probably the best version. The silver version is definitely the worst. I'm going to do that. Like that. Yeah. Okay, so the mini curse is a weird one. There are other curses that do worse things to your opponent that cost less mana. Well, not less necessarily, but cost about as much mana. Curses that just either provide your opponent a debuff so strong that they basically can't do anything, like the slow-mo curse or the pause curse, or that actually completely disable your opponent from doing anything, tend to be better than curses that just make the stuff that the opponent is doing smaller, especially if they're casting perfect runes, where it doesn't matter if they're smaller, they're still going to get through your shield. However, there are situations where this is much more useful. For one, because of the fact that this effect is so weak, these runes have their effect last quite a while longer than most other curses. This version lasts 10 seconds, this one lasts 12, this one lasts 14. Yeah, I think I do want to keep them in this order. It's character dependent, this one is the annoying part. Like, if you've got a character like Lapang or Nadia who can just cast perfect curses left, right, and center, then, like, no one cares if you have this curse. But if you have a character that's very dependent on their green runes, like Strat, or they are curse dependent, but they don't have the perfect curse blessing, I guess Tiffany, then you're put in a situation where this is actually really useful, because you're essentially disabling their green runes, their curses, and making their red runes a great deal weaker, so they have almost nothing left to attack you with. You're kind of almost entirely disabling them for longer than you would if you were using a disabling curse, which is the situation in which this is better than the disabling curses. But it's awkward because, again, that's only some characters, it's really unreliable. Again, there's a decent amount of other characters where it just doesn't matter. And what I think is especially kind of saddening is the actual damage multiplier. Don't get me wrong, it's not insignificant, I guess, but the amount that it reduces the damage by is 40%. I thought it might have been a bit more than that. I'm not going to lie, 40% damage reduction is all you get for landing a pretty normally priced curse that's kind of small, so it's kind of hard to get through shield, that requires a full combo to be committed to be able to actually, like, land. It's like, that's all you get, you know? I have mixed feelings on this one, because sometimes I feel like it's the worst curse in the game, but, like, sometimes it kind of shines because of the fact that it lasts so long. Okay, so it has its merits. The bronze version is extremely cheap. Like the other ones, not so much, but the bronze version, I think it literally costs 10% of your mana. And again, this costs 25% of your mana, to put that in perspective. So we're talking less than half the cost of what you'd think would be the cheapest rune in the game. So this is really cheap. The only thing is that, like, what's the use of this being super cheap? Because it's not like you can spam this, because you need to, for every single time you draw this, you know, follow it up with green runes to combo it into something. So it's not really like spamming this is helpful. And as well as that, speaking of green runes, whenever you draw this, it's very often misinterpreted as a small green rune, which is really annoying. Because of course, when you draw these quickly, you usually don't do these sharp corners, you usually curve them a little. And when you curve them a little, it starts to look a little bit like a triangle. And so a lot of the time you can draw this pretty accurately, but just curve the corners a bit and it will just draw a small green rune. Which means that it's even worse, because, like, you could at least maybe sort of spam this and add a medium green rune for every single one of these and just send a whole bunch of them at your opponent. But you can't really, because if you do that, you have to draw this quickly, and to draw this quickly, well, you're just going to keep getting small green runes instead of the curse you want if you try and draw it quickly. It's just, yeah. Honestly, I'm talking myself into knocking this down. Yeah, honestly, yeah, I've talked myself into it. I think I'm knocking it down there. Yeah, I don't think I like the smallest version. Part of me thinks I might be sleeping on it, just because it's super cheap. Like, crazy cheap. And it does last 10 seconds, and while that's the shortest time, that's still only 4 seconds shorter than the longest version. Like, But I don't think I can justify it to myself. Nah, this is definitely the best version, and the silver version is inarguably the worst. You get this extra line here, which means it takes longer to draw. Not that much longer, but still longer to draw. All you get for that is 2 extra seconds on the timer. At least the gold version gets a teensy bit bigger than the original version, if I remember right. So it's a little bit easy to get through shields. This is not bigger than the original, if I remember correctly. And it costs a decent amount more. And what do you get for it? You get 2 extra seconds of the effect. Whoopee. Definitely the worst version. But yes. Anyway, anti-magic. Oh boy, this is a difficult one. I keep going back and forth on anti-magic. Anti-magic is a blessing that is completely exclusive to Cassie, which is part of the reason it's so hard to rank, because I mentioned that Cassie is one of the worst characters in the game, and what does anti-magic do? It cancels all blessings and curses on both players. That could be one of the best effects in the game, but the problem is that Cassie's got like nothing but curses. And you want to hit your opponent with those curses, but if you ever cast this spell, you're going to cancel your own curses. So it's like, if this was on any other character, this could actually be easy S tier. But the problem is, it costs 70% of your mana, and it often is just going to sabotage yourself if you're using it on Cassie, who is the only character who is able to learn this rune. Ugh, it's so annoying, because this should be S tier. The reason why it should be S tier is you might notice a kind of a theme developing here. Almost everything in A and S tier is a yellow rune. And that's because, well, yellow runes are really good. They activate instantly, they provide you a benefit that is usually one of the most character-defining traits that a character has, is the blessings they have. It usually massively shapes their playstyle, whether they're able to enlarge their runes, or speed up their runes, or gain extra mana for blocking, or gain extra mana for dealing damage. It's usually, again, some of the most defining stuff in their playstyle. The final reason why they're so good is that there's no way in the game that you can counter a blessing being cast. Since it doesn't have to go along the track and it can't be blocked, there's no way you can't super shield a blessing. You know, you just draw it and it activates. And this is the only way in the entire game you can cancel a blessing. So if the opponent has some really overpowered blessings, and again, all the most overpowered spells in the game are blessings, then yeah, this is literally the only tool in the entire game you have to counter that. Which is why it should be S tier. But they put it on the only character that has just so many curses that it's like... I'll put it low A tier. I could be overestimating it. You see, the thing is, I did say that I don't want to tie it to the characters too much. And I did say that this should be S tier, but it's on Cassie. But the thing is, as well as that, Cassie does have a blessing here we're going to get to later, which can halve the mana cost of runes. And that's, I think, part of the reason why Cassie can still use this blessing. Because I have to remember, it costs a lot of mana to cast this. And I'm just thinking, maybe even if you did give it to a character without that many curses, they still wouldn't like it, because they wouldn't be able to cast it for cheap, and it costs a lot of mana. And this is very timing dependent, so the fact it's super expensive is a bit of a turn-off. Really hard one to rank. I think, actually, no, I'll put it there. I think I'm happy with that. Yeah, I like it there. Alright, went on a bit with that one. The curse that flips your screen upside down, which I didn't actually realise for a long time, and I feel dumb now that this is one that only Cassie learns. Oh boy, this is a weird one. Okay, the application... Oh, I'll put it there. The application of this curse is very, very niche, but I have to admit, the situation in which you actually, like, want to use this curse, in that situation, it's surprisingly effective. So you might have thought this would be an F tier curse, because all this does is flip the opponent's screen upside down. It doesn't stop them from drawing, they just have to draw upside down. And it doesn't deal any damage to them, it doesn't really apply any debuff, except the distraction of flipping your screen upside down. And of course, against a human player, that might do a bit more, but against an AI, what's that going to do? Well, the AIs are programmed to be less aggressive when their screen is flipped upside down, but until recently, I didn't understand how it actually worked. I thought they just maybe went a little bit easy on you for a bit, and I kind of didn't like the thought that I was just relying on the AI deciding to not go so hard on me. But it turns out the way they have it coded is essentially every single rune in the game has a value attached to it to say how long the AI should take to draw it. Even though it can draw perfectly, they still have a timer attached to how long it takes for them to draw for each rune in the game. And basically, when their screen is flipped upside down, they obviously multiply the time it takes for them to draw every rune in the game. So that is why it's actually sometimes really useful, is because if your opponent has some really dreadful runes that they can hit you with that take a long time for the AI to draw, usually you don't really notice that it takes a long time, because even the longest of times is like 1 second and maybe a bit afterwards. So when you multiply that by a large amount, you can really slow the opponent down depending on what runes they're using, if they are long draw time runes. So, yeah, because I don't think the AI stops casting, like, hard to draw runes when the screen's upside down. So I think they will just opt to, like, spend a really long time drawing just one rune if you flip their screen like that. Which is pretty funny. So yeah, in that situation, this is really useful. As well as this, it's a pretty big curse. As well as this, it's actually quite easy to draw perfectly. Again, like this one, it's one of the easiest runes in the game to draw perfectly. So yeah, there's just one thing that stops me from putting it higher. I actually genuinely would not have a problem with putting it, like, even mid-D tier, if it weren't for one thing. This costs 40% of your mana. Now that's pretty normal for a curse, but for a curse with such a minor effect... like, this would actually unironically be a decent curse. In fact, it might break C tier. It would unironically be a decent curse if it was a bit cheaper. Because even though its effect is weak, it is really easy to just throw out there whenever you're not doing anything else. When it's just like, I've got a moment, I can cast something, but I don't have that much time. What do I throw out there? Oh, I may as well throw this out there. It doesn't cost that much. It's pretty easy to get through shields because it's pretty big. I might even cast it perfectly just by accident because it's really easy to cast perfectly. You know, stuff like that. It could be just one of those things that's really nice to throw out whenever you got a second. But the problem is, again, 40%, it's just barely expensive enough that you don't really have the mana to be like, oh, I guess I can just throw this out there. It's, by the way, that's the same amount as this, to give you an example. This costs 40% of your mana. Anyway, there is the mana discount blessings, which halve your mana, or internally these are called ergonomy. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Like ergonomics, but with onomy on the end. I don't know if you pronounce it like ergonomy or ergonomy. Both of those sound weird to me. Anyway, say hello to... Ooh, actually, am I gonna... Well, I might do something blasphemous. I might do something blasphemous here. Do I stick by this? I think I do. So... we finally found a rune besides this one, better than Petalfall. This rune, which is not the version Cassie learns, this is the bronze version, Cassie learns the gold version. Silver version is programmed into the game, and it gives you 2 half-cost runes instead of 1 or 3, but its texture's been deleted, so trying to load it crashes the game. Anyway, so basically, these half-cost ones are really strong, because they essentially make every single rune in your entire grimoire cheaper, provided you can draw fast. Like, think of it this way. Okay, so, just in case you were wondering, this costs 20% of your mana, this costs 60% of your mana. And they give you a half-cost one. So as long as you're casting something that costs more than 40% of your mana, so more than this, you are getting more value out of that. Which actually explains a lot, because I always felt like I was just barely not quite getting a benefit when I used this on these. And now I'm realizing that I was getting the exact same. I was paying 20 to get a 20 discount. So yeah, I was kind of right with my gut feeling there. Anyway, yeah, so as long as you're casting stuff that costs more than 40, every single rune in your grimoire that costs more than 40 mana is instantly getting a discount on everything you cast, provided you can draw fast. And luckily, this rune right here is relatively... it could be a little bit more, but it's relatively lenient. You can kind of just cast this like really quickly, just like that. Just like rotate your hand like that. Like just quickly rotate it like that. And usually it will recognize what you're drawing. Which means that when you get a character with this rune, you can absolutely spam the hell out of it and just be like... it's just like a woo sound effect every time you do it. And just be like whoop, whoop, whoop. Just like constant spamming them with like spells that should cost you so much mana that you couldn't possibly afford them, but instead you're just spamming them at your opponent. I think this has to be S tier, because it's a bit of a weird one. The characters that are given this rune are actually some of the weaker characters in the game for the most part, but I think that they are the best runes in those weaker characters' kits. The characters that get this rune is, well, the gold version, of course, is given to Cassie, who I already mentioned is one of the weakest characters in the game. And this version is given to Caleb, who I also mentioned I'm not that big on, Carbuncle, who is decent, but he's definitely the weakest of the teachers, and Madrugada. Now, that is the exception, Madrugada. I mentioned that mostly it's bad characters that get this, but part of the reason this is in S tier is because Madrugada shows how broken this rune is when you actually give it to a character that's good. Because this is half the reason Madrugada is as broken as she is. Madrugada learns the Giant Red Curse, the one that can deal 70 damage in one hit if it's not blocked. That's supposed to cost 100% of your mana. So when you can just on command make it cost half and pay 70 instead of 70% instead of 100% of your mana to get this, because obviously you're paying 50% plus the 20% of this, that's really good. That's actually insanely good. That's actually broken. To put it in perspective, it might not sound like that much of a discount, but this rune right here costs 70% of your mana. So essentially, if you play Madrugada, you can pay the same amount it would be to cast one of these to cast one of these. And again, these are giant and will obliterate your opponent's health bar. I think towards the end of the game, 6 of these kills your opponent. So you have something that only costs 70% of your mana that will take a sixth of your opponent's health off if they block it, and a third if they don't. If you can find a way to get this through their shield, like making it bigger last second, cough cough, or disable their shield or whatever, you can literally kill your opponent in 3 hits with something that doesn't even cost all your mana. That's terrifying. Yeah. Yep. You can see why this is an S tier, really high towards the top S tier as well. Extremely powerful stuff there. This version is definitely a little bit worse, but I definitely don't think it's much worse. The thing is, when you think about it, it sounds better, because it's like, wait, you're paying triple, but you're getting triple the effect. So it's literally the same amount of value you get, except for this one, you don't have to draw it 3 times. You just have to draw it once, but a little bit longer. Isn't that better? And I think situationally it can be better, but I think the problem is, this one is super convenient. You gotta remember that in this game, you are 100% of the time constantly non-stop regenerating your mana, as long as you're not shielding. So it's a lot more convenient to just pay a third of the amount to get the same effect but once instead of 3 times, and just use it whenever you want. With this one, the second you cast it, you're committed to using those 3 discounts as your next 3 spells, which can kind of force you into a corner and make you make plays you didn't exactly want to make. And again, it's just less convenient that you can't just decide, oh, I've got 20 mana to spare, I'll cast this right now. You know, it's really easy to just use this whenever you want, because it's literally cheaper than even the smallest green rune in the game. It's super cheap to cast this. But this one being expensive means it's a little bit less flexible. Now, that being said, as I say, it's still an amazing effect, and it's still absolutely an S tier rune. It's just not quite as good as the other version. Anyway, then we've got the drawing board curses, as these are internally called. The ones that cover the opponent's drawing board with stuff that they have to get rid of to be able to see again, and once they get rid of it all, they are able to draw again, but until they do, they cannot draw any runes. These curses are your premium, like, standard curses that you use most of the time. If you want a curse to just disable your opponent. If you have the Perfect Blessing combined with one of these iterations of this curse, then you really have a pretty powerful tool right there. Because you can really spam these at your opponent and just keep them in an infinite kind of stun lock. Now, usually it doesn't quite play out that well, of course. People can Perfect Shield, people can use stuff like Petal Fall. But yeah, in theory you can do that. So I'm going to put the gold version of it here. I don't think it's quite as good as the slowdown, but it's pretty good. I'm going to put the silver version... Actually, I'm going to rank the bronze version before that one. I'm going to put the bronze version here, and I'm going to put the silver version, honestly, here. This probably seems like quite a gap. The thing is, the gold version and the bronze version are both pretty easy to cast perfectly. And as well as that, I feel like this is one of those effects where you want to go to one extreme or the other. You either want the cheapest version that's the easiest to draw to just throw out there whenever it's convenient, or you want the version which stuns them for the longest time. You don't want the version that goes in the middle, I don't think. Especially because this version is way harder to draw perfectly than both of these. And this one is technically not even really better than the middle one. Basically, you know how like it covers your screen with stuff that you have to get rid of? If you wait long enough and you still haven't managed to get rid of everything, it disappears on its own. With this one, it doesn't actually put more stuff on the screen as this one, compared to this one. It puts the same amount of stuff on the screen that covers the opponent's drawing board. It just makes it so the timer before they disappear, if the opponent doesn't get rid of them, is longer. So, as well as that, assuming your opponent tries to get rid of the stuff on the screen, this one literally isn't even better than this one. So, this is the only version that actually puts more stuff to cover the opponent's screen. And, yeah. So you can see what I mean. I'm actually starting to think I might want to swap these around. I don't know. I don't use the bronze version much, but I'm realizing I don't think that's because the bronze version is bad. I think it's because the bronze version is usually on characters who would find this curse less useful. Because the characters who have the bronze version, if I remember right, is there a third one? There's Cassie and the Jin for definite. I don't remember if there's a third one or if that's it. I think it's Cassie and the Jin. The Jin does not need this curse. Well, I don't know. I guess it's fine he has it. But the Jin, obviously, curses are not his playstyle. And Cassie, don't get me wrong, curses are her playstyle. But this is the last curse she learns. It's kind of weird they actually give it to her so late. And by the time you have this one, you already have the mini curse, you already have the pig curse and all that. You have a lot of curses, so you don't end up using it that much just because you've got so many to pick from. But it is still useful. And I'm just thinking, if I could give this to anyone, if I was making my perfect character and I had to give them one version of this drawing board curse, I probably would give them a bronze version, actually, even though the gold version is on a lot more characters, like better characters for it. Like this gold version is on Rainbow, and that's really good, because Rainbow obviously can cast runes perfectly on command and gain a massive mana regeneration buff at the same time, so she can afford to do that, and she can just spam this at the opponent and keep them infinitely stun locked a lot of the time. So it's really good on Rainbow, but that's not necessarily because it's the gold version, it's just because Rainbow has the tools to make it good. And it's really good on Lepang too, but I'm realizing now that's also because Lepang has the perfect curse, and also he doesn't have the mana regeneration, but he does have the blessing which gives you mana for blocking, and a curse which steals mana from your opponent. So yeah, Anyway, speaking of the Jin, we were talking about Jin earlier. Immolation. This is like the definition of top of B tier for me. Okay, Immolation is a bit of a weird one. It's simultaneously crazy strong, but not that good, actually. Okay. It turns all your green runes into red runes, which is a crazy strong effect. But of course, because it's a crazy strong effect, and the devs know it, they made it cost 90% of your mana, and they also made it so its accuracy threshold is pretty high. I don't remember what it was, but it was higher than 80%. I think it was like 84 or something. So it's a bit finicky in terms of what it counts as being close enough to that shape, and it really requires all your mana. It's a very committal blessing. That's the problem, really, is that, I mean, again, same issue as this one, and this one, but this one gets ranked higher than all three of those because, well, it's a blessing, it's less counterable, and in fairness, it has a greater reward on average, I think, than all three of those previous ones. This is really powerful when you get the mana to cast it, and it has less ways it can go wrong, because, don't get me wrong, it can go wrong, but most of the ways it goes wrong is just you draw it wrong, or you just barely didn't get enough mana for it, and it's a bit annoying. Whereas with some of the other ones, if it all goes wrong, then the past 10 seconds you spent spending all your mana to assemble this combo is all just wasted. Whereas here it's just like, oh, you missed a timing, you kind of missed out on an opportunity, instead of, like, you really wasted a lot of resources. So yeah, it's a weird one, because, like, I want to say this is better, Because I know there are other characters you could give this that would make them really powerful. Again, just like the Giant Red Rune, if you could give this to a character with the mana discount blessing, I think this instantly becomes probably low S tier. But because you can't, because you're playing it with the Djinn, whose only method of mana gain is this, I think I want to have it top of B instead. The other thing that the Djinn gets is the shield blessing, which makes your shield regenerate at triple the speed. He gets the gold version. This one is the bronze version, which Princess Tiffany learns. And the silver version, again, it's coded in the game, but the texture's been deleted, so I can't load it, which sucks, and it's unused. Anyway, so, where do I want to put this? It feels weird putting this below the blocking, the mana sink blessings, because I love the shield blessings, and I wish more characters had them. But I have to admit, I think the mana sink blessings probably are better. It's one of those things where they don't feel better. This feels so good, but I have to admit, a lot of the characters that have these blessings aren't some of the strongest characters in the game. The characters... Okay, so, as I mentioned, Princess Tiffany has this one, and she's probably the single worst character in the entire game. And the Djinn, Carbuncle, and Samdi have this one. And probably out of those, Samdi's probably the strongest out of those characters. But none of those, that selection are particularly like, whoa, that's a really good character. So... I have to admit, and I don't think it's anything, and it's like one of those things where I'm not sure if it's to do with the fact that Shield Blessing maybe isn't worth the slot, even though it seems really good. Because, okay, it feels really good because there's so many combos you can just completely obliterate without having to use your Super Shield when you use one of these blessings. And they're not that expensive, and this version is extremely short, but this one actually lasts quite a while. Which is part of why I kind of want to rank it higher. But I have to admit, this is one of those runes you can live without, even though it's very nice to have in your kit. Whereas, if you have no other way of gaining extra mana, you kind of can't live without something like the Mana Sink Blessing if you have no mana discount, mana regen, like, buff, or mana gain for dealing damage. So, yeah. Anyway. Well, I think I'll leave it there. Now, what frustrates me as well is I was actually planning initially to rank them like this. But I forgot how ridiculously short the bronze version of this blessing is. I think the gold version is actually better, even though it's a bit more finicky with trying to draw it accurately. And this one is a bit less finicky. Even though usually when you're in a panic, it's like nicer to be able to just cast the one that's easier to draw. Which is why I would say this one is better. Especially if it costs less as well. You know, you might not know until the last second you're going to need the blessing. As well as that, I've noticed that it's much nicer if you kind of see attacks coming beforehand, and you know that you don't need to block anything yet, but you also know that you might not have time to draw this later. It's nice knowing that if you draw this early, and like it's way too early, like you're not going to be able to use the blocking very effectively until like a few seconds from now. If you do that with this one, then you've wasted your mana, and it runs out before the attack reaches you. But if you do that with this one, it lasts long enough that by the time it reaches you, you've still got the buff. So once I got a bit more comfortable with realizing, oh, this does last quite a while, I think this one's actually better. Anyway, finally, the Djinn. He learns the Giant Red Rune. Oh, it's the best rune in the game. Nah, it's decent. It's, there. Yeah, I think I put it there. So, yeah, So this rune, it's a bit of a weird one. I know I said Madrugada is like the most overpowered character in the game, no contest, and I still believe that. But I mentioned before, I think this is why this is ranked so highly. The reason Madrugada is the most overpowered character in the game, no contest, is not because she can use this rune. It's because she can use this rune on this rune. I think this rune on its own is... This Giant Red Rune is not that busted. Don't get me wrong, it's good. There's a lot of... It's one of those runes where, like, I would almost never be upset about a character having it, but, like, I would say there's almost always something better they could get compared to this as their final rune. I mean, honestly, I genuinely... When I play the Djinn, I rarely use it. even though the Jin is the only starter character who can learn this rune, and the only other character besides the Jin who can cast that rune is Madrugada. When I play the Jin, I hardly ever use it, because again, it costs all my mana. Everything's already so expensive with the Jin. I mean, I mentioned Immolation costs almost all my mana. And as I said, Immolation, I kind of already have all the red runes I need. I can cast a bunch of medium-sized green runes and turn them into red runes using this. So, yeah. I don't like this. I don't like this on characters who don't have the mana gain or discount to compensate, and most characters don't. I don't know, maybe I could rank it a bit higher, because in fairness, like, if someone like Rainbow could use this, who had like a mana regen blessing, that would also be pretty good. In fairness. But I think I'll leave it where it is. Actually, I think I'll swap these. No. I think they're fine where they are. I think I'll stick with that. Alright, then there's Princess Tiffany. Of course, she's got the mana regen blessing. Well, this is the bronze version. She gets the silver version, and Rainbow gets the gold version. So, I swear I'm losing my mind. According to the code, all three of these blessings double the speed at which you regenerate mana. But I swear Rainbow's regenerates faster. Like, Nadia's and Princess Tiffany, yeah, I could believe those are the same. I swear to God, Rainbow's definitely regenerates faster, and the code is lying to me. I don't know what it is. I swear it just feels like he regenerates faster. But either way, Okay, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to do it yet, because I'm going to do it once I've actually put everything on the tier list. But I think I want to nudge down some of these low S tiers to high A tier. But on that note, I'll probably nudge this down with them. Honestly. Yeah, okay, so the gold version is there. Rainbow's version of the mana regen blessing is so good. It may cost, I think, literally all your mana. Well, not literally. I think it's like 95 or 90%. But you get that back so fast. And the most effective way to use this is to use it, take advantage of the mana regen for a few seconds, and then before it runs out, cast it again. Because then you can make sure that you just constantly keep it up, and it just regenerates so fast that having to spend all your mana doesn't feel like that big of a price, as long as you never accidentally let the buff run out and have to wait the long way to get back to full mana to reactivate it. Anyway, so the gold version is by far the best, and this is one of those ones where I think the other versions actually are quite a bit worse than the best version. I think that the one that Nadia gets, the bronze version, is alright. While it feels super good for Rainbow, for Nadia it kind of feels like, it's a bit better. But it doesn't feel like a big improvement. It just feels like, yeah, it's a bit better. Honestly, I think I'd rank it lower than that. The barrier curse, yeah. I think I'd rank it there. And then Princess Tiffany, as if she wasn't already having it rough enough, she not only, like, is the only character who, like, has to actually rely on the mana regen blessing as, like, their only effective offensive tool, but they also got the worst version of the mana regen blessing. They really just did it like that. So, yeah, the silver version is simultaneously expensive, picky, and not even that effective. Whereas Rainbow's is a little bit picky about what counts as drawing it correctly, but at least regenerates mana super fast. And Nadia's is not quite so expensive and pretty easy to draw, even if it doesn't last that long or have that intense of an effect. Tiffany just has the worst of both worlds. She has both the fact that it doesn't feel that significant and feels like it wears off too quickly, and the fact that it's awkward and picky about what counts as drawing it correctly, and it costs almost all your mana. It's like, ugh, it's the worst of both. But again, it is still the mana regen blessing, and again, mana gain is like an important thing to have somewhere in your toolkit. It's definitely the best rune that Princess Tiffany has, so it's still B tier, it's just not very high B tier. Speaking of important defining tools for Princess Tiffany, the Frog Curse. I'm going to drop probably a pretty spicy take, I guess. Nah, I'll put it there. I think the Pig Curse is better than the Frog Curse. Yeah, fight me. No, but seriously. Okay, here's the thing. In theory, the frog pit curse is better. The problem for me is that the frog curse is so much harder to draw. And it's one of those things, if you take your time, it is not hard to draw. It is easy to draw if you take your time. But if you're in a rush, it is so annoying trying to draw this, because it's so square. It's kind of similar to this one, where if you don't do these like corners nice and square, it won't recognize it. Now, it's not quite as bad as this one. You can curve it a little bit, and it'll still be fine. But if you do curve it, it's kind of a coin flip, whether it'll actually recognize it or not. Which isn't very useful. You'd rather have it be much more consistent in, you know, such a fast-paced game. So, yeah, not really a fan of the frog curse. I much prefer the pig curse. I honestly don't even think it's that much better that they only cast small green runes rather than small red runes. Because don't get me wrong, the small red rune... You know what, actually, I'm talking myself into this. I'm going to put the pig... You know what, I'm going to put the pig curse all the way up here in B tier. I'm going to do it. I'm crazy, I'll do it. No, but seriously. Okay, because I just realised something that I felt as a gut feeling, but I wasn't sure if I, like, was right about, but I just realised I am right about this. The fact that the small red rune costs 50% of your mana, and your shield is so slow as a pig that you'll be spending most of your time shielding so you can't regenerate mana, means that as a pig, although you can still cast small red runes, you effectively can't really cast anything. And I already mentioned how small red runes have pathetic mana to damage ratios. These do like no damage, even when not blocked. I think, if I remember right, these do... Oh yes, if I remember, these do 15 damage if not blocked. Bearing in mind, these do 20 damage if not blocked. So these do less damage than the medium-sized green runes if not blocked. They cost more than the medium-sized green runes, and if they are blocked, they only do about as much damage as one of these. And they're almost always going to be blocked because they're so tiny, so it's easy to block them. So yeah, anyway, getting a bit off track. They cost 50% of your mana, whereas these cost 25%. Now, here's the thing. The thing that's most annoying when you turn someone into a frog is they spam these tiny green runes at you. And yes, you can block them all and take no damage, but it's kind of annoying because right now you want to be capitalizing on the fact that, you know, their shield is weak. You want to be attacking them. You want to be breaking them down while they're vulnerable. But instead, you have to spend half your time keeping your shield up to block all these tiny little green runes. Because even though they are easy to block all of, you still need to hold your shield up to block them. And because it's the only thing they can cast, they're going to spam these at you, so you have no room to take a breather and actually cast some stuff at them. You're going to have to be constantly holding your shield up to block it all. And it's just frustrating. Whereas if they're a pig, they can only send like 2 of them and then all their mana's gone. And then they're going to have to start shielding to start blocking stuff, so they won't be able to regenerate enough to send a 3rd one. So you block like 2 red runes, and then for the rest of the time they're a pig, you've got as much free time as you want to take advantage of the fact they've got a weaker shield. Again, when they're a frog, you've got a much harder rune to draw, and as well as that, they've got much more ability to interrupt what you're doing and harass you, even if you can technically negate all the damage they can send at you. Not to mention, of course, green runes are faster, so the time before they reach you and you have to shield is shorter. So yeah, they can do a lot more to fuck up your plans if you use the frog curse compared to the pig curse. I genuinely think the pig curse is better. I really do. Anyway. Oh boy. Yeah, we're really laying into Princess Tiffany right now. So I already mentioned how she's the worst in the game. Easily. Her fate was sealed with this curse. This is her character-specific curse. Shopping spree. Or in the game internally it's called Ergonomy Curse. Instead of Ergonomy Blessing, because it does the opposite of this. This makes your next rune cost half as much. This makes the opponent's next 2 runes cost double. Now you might be thinking, what? That doesn't sound that bad. I mean, they won't even be able to cast their runes that cost more than 50% of their mana, and in fairness, that's a good amount of runes in the game. I mean, if you look at this rune, this costs 70%. They can't cast these at all, even if they got full mana, if they get hit by this curse. They can't cast most of their blessings. I mean, this costs more than half their mana. This costs more than half. This costs more than half. This costs more than half. This. This one costs half, so they have to spend all of their mana to cast this one. What are you on about? Petalfall costs more than half. This one costs more than half. There's so many stuff they can't even cast while it's doubled, and the stuff they can cast is expensive. How is this not a super powerful curse? Because this exists. Every character has this rune. You hit them with this curse. They cast this rune twice. The effect of this curse is gone. So essentially, all you get for hitting the opponent with this curse is effectively making them lose 50% of their mana. And don't get me wrong, there's utility in making your opponent lose mana, but this is more expensive than this curse, which we're going to get to later. But this curse makes your opponent lose all of their mana and fully replenishes your mana, no matter what it was before. So why would you draw a more expensive curse that does a weaker effect? The only time this is going to do something better is if they're stupid enough to not cast this twice. But usually, from what I've seen, the AI is actually smart enough to be programmed to just cast this twice whenever you hit them with this curse. This curse is the single worst curse in the game, if we're not counting challenge mode runes, yeah. Some of these might be worse. But in terms of ones you can actually use in story mode, yep, worst in the game, easy. Like, no question about it. This is the closest you can get to a rune that actually does nothing. Like, you spend mana, and it, at best, if it's not blocked, not super shielded, doesn't get cancelled by some other kind of effect, best case scenario is that it makes your opponent lose 50% of their mana. That's not even to say what happens if they have this curse in their grimoire, or this. If they have this, they only lose 40% of their mana. If they have this, they only lose 20% of their mana. That's pathetic. So, yeah, awful curse. And it sucks, because I think it's a cool idea. I like the idea of this curse. But I think that, while it kind of sounds like it makes sense to make it, the amount of runes they cast is what determines when it ends, I think it shouldn't be that. I think it should just be, this lasts for so many seconds. Because then you would have at least so much time where you're guaranteed that the opponent will definitely, be disabled from casting their more expensive runes and struggle to cast their cheaper runes. Or they could do a mix. I would be happy if it was like, it lasts for, 8 seconds, but every time they cast a rune, it goes down by 2 seconds or whatever. I'd be fine with that. But yeah, the way it is right now, it's awful. Definitely the worst rune in the game. Actually useless. Like, this one's borderline useless. But this one is like, actually, there is no use case in which I recommend using this. No, not a single one. I can't think of any. I was about to say, well, maybe against, like, Hyperion. No, I can't. I can't make an excuse for this. Well, anyway, on to Samdi. He's got this Life Drain curse, which, my god, I always knew this curse was, like, low-key a little bit too strong. But I was kind of curious, okay, how too strong is this curse? Now, I was originally going to put this somewhere in B tier, but after seeing how actually too strong this curse is, I'm putting it that high. Do you want to know how much damage this curse does? Now, in fairness, it does take 15 full seconds for it to get its full effectiveness. However, over the course of 15 seconds, this rune does a total of 65 damage. To put that in perspective, if this is not blocked, it will deal 70 damage. This rune right here will delete nearly a third of your opponent's health in one hit. It just takes 15 seconds to deal the full 65 damage. That is insane. That you have a curse that is nice and cheap, relatively easy to land as far as curses go, although again, all curses aren't that easy to land and all curses are counterable. And all you do is you just land that, and then congratulations, a third of your opponent's health is gone. Whoa, okay, sure. Now this version, this is technically one of Nadia's curses. It's a bit of a weird one. It's technically another version of this curse, but most of them, when it's another version, their functionality is the exact same. They just have either a stronger effect or a longer effect. This one's an exception. So I believe, if I remember right, this is the silver version of the curse, and this is the gold version. Wait, no, this is the bronze version. Yeah, sorry, this is the bronze version and this is the silver version, which is weird because this version's longer. But this version has an extra effect in that it not only drains the opponent's health, but also recovers your own health. In fact, I think I misspoke earlier in the video, like the first part that I made. I did know this was the case, but it's something that, like, I still am not used to learning this. For a long time, I was under the false impression that Samdi also healed with his version of this curse. But no, only Nadia's version heals you as well as damaging the opponent slowly over time. And I think I accidentally said, like, this one he steals life from the opponent, when actually it drains it, but it doesn't give you health back, unless you use the lifesteal blessing. So yeah. Out of these two, it's hard to say which is better. This one caps off at 55 damage, which is obviously less than 65, but still a lot of damage. I think I'm going to say this is better, because, as I say, it's still a lot of damage, and you still heal gradually over that time. Anyway, the lifesteal blessings. This is Madrugada's version, and this is Samdi's version. Silver and gold. The bronze is unused. I've tried to load the bronze one, but it crashed the game. I can't find where the texture for the bronze one is, so I assume it's been deleted. But I don't know for sure if it's been deleted. But yeah. Anyway, these are weird. Okay, so, like, these could be S tier. Okay, I'm going to cut myself off there. These are S tier. Okay, no. This is S tier. This is high A. I think actually I'm going to knock this down a bit. Yeah. I'm happy with that, I think. Ooh, no, actually. I got to remember, these really do a absolute enormous amount of damage. Like, I can't put these lower than this. Well, anyway, alright. So, here's the rundown on lifesteal. It's a bit of a weird one. So, first of all, I actually didn't realise that lifesteal is not 100%, but this doesn't mean that they're bad at all. The lifesteal blessings only mean that you regenerate 80% of the amount of damage you did as health. Both of them are the same amount, it's both 80%. But because obviously 80 is pretty close to 100, I never actually realised, I thought it was 100%. But either way, 80% is still a good amount. When you have Madrugada, obviously you can cast this constantly. And this can remove either a sixth of your opponent's health if they block it, or a third. And I'm talking at the end of the game as well, I'm not talking early on in the game. So that means that with the lifesteal blessing, you can regenerate about a third of your health on top of taking a third of your opponent's health if this is unblocked, or a sixth if it is blocked, which is still pretty good. And remember, that's not even counting trying to enlarge it with this blessing, which would make it even more terrifying. So don't get me wrong, lifesteal's one of those ones where the ceiling for potential value is through the roof. Like, I feel like if you're playing a character with lifesteal, there is literally basically no situation in which you can just give up and say, oh, I've lost this game now. You could be on, like, your health bar could be non-existent, but you could technically not be dead yet, and your opponent could have a full health bar, and you could see, like, an enormous attack coming at you. And you could still win the game just because you get, like, a lucky hit on the opponent through their super shield using an enlarged blessing while the lifesteal is active, and suddenly you replenish half your health while knocking your opponent down to half health, and now it's neck and neck again. It's like, you can come back from anything with the lifesteal blessing. The problem is that it gives you no benefit when you're already ahead a lot of the time. And the lifesteal blessing is expensive. This is the reason why the silver version is better, because both of them last a while, so the silver version being cheaper is more effective. The gold version that Samdi has, by the way, it's kind of weird. They look nothing alike, and Samdi's version is easy to draw, but it's the gold version I checked in the files. But anyway, the gold version... Actually, I might even swap these around still. Yeah. The gold version, it lasts a really long time. It's one of the longest lasting buffs in the entire game. But it costs 80% of your mana. It's a lot to spend, and you rarely get an opportunity to actually spend that. Especially because you're playing Samdi, who doesn't have a mana regen blessing or mana discount blessing. He does have this, but that's obviously dependent on actually hitting the opponent and them not super shielding. So, and it's also the hardest to draw and most expensive version of this blessing. So, it's still a little awkward. But yeah. Anyway, yeah. So the lifesteal is kind of difficult to get going, but like you can flip any game if you have lifesteal. If you have lifesteal, you can flip a game for any situation. I think the main thing is though that like a lot of the best runes in the game help you push advantage. Like when you're already winning, they help you win harder because that means you can end games really fast. You can just get the advantage early on and just close it out nice and easy. So something that doesn't help you when you're ahead. This is one of those things where it really should be through the roof S tier, broken, like top 5 runes in the game easily. But just the fact it doesn't give you like anything when you're already ahead, combined with the fact it is pretty expensive, even the silver version, but the gold version especially. Yeah, I think I can't really rank them quite that high, but they're still very good. Anyway, Rainbow's Giant Blessing. Where am I going to put this one? This is another one of those matchup dependent ones. Like, if your opponent is only planning to hit you with green rune combos, then this is practically a free win button. Makes your shield 2.5 times larger, so I was actually very close with my gut feeling guess when I said about triple the size in that first video. It makes your shield 2.5 times larger, meaning that it both regenerates at 2.5 times the speed while also being 2.5 times bigger. And again, that means that any kind of green rune combos with curses, or just maybe just sped up green runes with strat, completely useless against Rainbow. But then there's just the fact that it doesn't help you at all against red runes or perfect runes. And there's a lot of characters who don't really rely that much on green runes and more use red runes or perfect runes, and then the Giant Blessing doesn't help you at all. I think I put it here. Which makes sense. The Giant Blessing is definitely better than the Shield Blessings. The Shield Blessings make your shield regenerate at triple the speed. This technically doesn't do triple, but it does 2.5 times and also makes the maximum size of your shield 2.5 times bigger. So it shouldn't be any surprise that this is better than the Shield Blessings, even though they're pretty close. They do the same job, basically. So yeah, this definitely deserves a spot. You see, it's weird, because on Rainbow, the fact that this doesn't block red and perfect runes isn't actually that much of a big deal, because red and perfect runes cost a lot of mana, and Rainbow can really disrupt people who want to spam who want to spam perfect red runes or perfect curses or whatever, or just generally unblockable stuff. She can really mess with those people by spamming the perfect drawing board curse, this one. But if you're playing a character, in theory, who had this rune, who didn't have this and the perfect blessing to be able to really disrupt the opponent, then they might struggle a lot, which is why I'm kind of thinking about changing this. But I think I like this where it is. Yeah, I think I do. Also, you know, I'm thinking about this more. No, okay, you know, I like this being next to these, but I think these need to go down. Yeah, I think I'll stick with that. Right, we're getting there, getting towards the end. Gizmo. Oh wait, actually no, not Gizmo, we're still on Rainbow. We'll get to Gizmo in a moment. This is a rune for Gizmo though. This is the Bronze Auto Shield Blessing, and Rainbow gets the Silver. Can I just talk for a moment how not only does the two Auto Shield Blessings look nothing alike, but can I just talk about how Gizmo's whole deal is auto shielding? And then they just gave it to Rainbow, and they literally gave Rainbow the stronger version. Like, bruh. Okay, I say that. I actually don't know which is better out of these two. Okay, no, I say that. Okay, just now. Let me put down my ranking, and then I'll talk about this. I think that Rainbow's version is better, but I think it's by a narrow margin, and it does mostly just depend on the situation. Obviously, the bronze version, because it's bronze, it's cheaper, which is nice. But it's just like... With the Auto Shield Blessing, the one way it goes wrong, even though it's a very strong blessing, is that you don't quite remember exactly when it's going to wear off, and it wears off a little bit before you thought it was going to, and then it just fails to block one rune, but that one rune was very important to block, and now you're getting, like, fucked up because it didn't get blocked. And... obviously, having a longer timer on your auto shield, even if it is more expensive, is kind of important then. Especially on a character like Rainbow, who can get as much mana as they want with this. Yeah, I think I agree with this ordering. Also, fun fact, there is a gold auto shield blessing. There isn't a texture for it. However, this one doesn't seem to crash the game. It seems to use the same texture as the silver one, but I can tell it's a different rune because it costs more mana and it lasts longer than the silver one. So yeah, just a fun fact. I've had that one in now as well. Yeah. Anyway, those are the auto shield ones. Yeah, I think I'm happy putting them there. I'm just thinking, is it maybe better than these? Again, I never used to use these, so it's like I think to myself, nah, it's not better than these. But then I have to admit, like, these runes, I'm realizing that the characters that do have these, it's really important to them. And like, I feel like I didn't pick up on how important these runes were to those characters until more recently, when I've revisited the game. So, yeah, and again, I've realized just how important having some form of mana gain or discount is on every character, so I think they still belong there. But Auto Shield is still useful because it is a sort of mana gain in a way, because you don't have to lose mana by holding up your shield. Anyway, Giant Green Rune. This is a certified HUD classic. No. I'm gonna put it... Yeah, I'm gonna put it there. No, I'm gonna put it... No, I'm putting it this low, aren't I? Yeah, I'm gonna put it there. Okay, this is a weird one. So this is good mana for damage value. Very good. It costs 75% of your mana, and if I remember right, it does 60 damage, so just a little bit less than this, if not blocked. So it's a sizable amount of damage. It's really powerful. The thing is, it's, again, very same problem as this one, this one, this one, this one, blah, blah, blah. It's greedy. Because to actually deal a good amount of damage with this, you're often casting this, comboing it with a medium-sized green rune, comboing that with small-sized green runes, and then giving it a speed boost or something like that. I think that every character who learns the Giant Green Rune also gets a speed boost for whatever reason, except Hyperion. But yeah, so it makes sense that it's Rainbow and Caleb are basically who I'm talking about right now, of course. Both of them get a speed up blessing. So we've never seen them used with the enlargement blessing. Maybe that would be even better, but yeah, either way. It's just a bit of an awkward one, this one, because, like, yes, it can do an enormous amount of damage. Yes, it's pretty good for cost, considering how powerful it is. This is, like, one of the best runes if you want to kill your opponent, like, speed run, like, killing them, getting them dead as fast as possible. But just when this gets super shielded, you commit so much whenever you use this rune to be able to get good value out of it and have it be worth it, that this sucks to get super shielded, and it sucks to get erased by Caleb's blessing, and it sucks to get hit by Petalfall. And I feel like there's so much that counters this. But when it does land, it is so good. It ends games so fast. I think that, yeah, I think I'm fine keeping it at C. I'll nudge that over. Yeah, I'll keep it there. Speaking of Caleb's blessing, the one that wipes off all runes off the screen, here it is. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I'm having a realization I've been playing Caleb wrong the whole time. You see, I think I must have first seen this rune on Princess Tiffany, because Princess Tiffany and Caleb are the two who learn this rune. Well, technically Carbuncle also learns it, but he learns it in challenge mode, not story mode. Anyway, and I mentioned this is the worst blessing in the game. However, it's actually not bad on Caleb. It's awful on Princess Tiffany, because she only has this blessing. But Caleb can halve the cost of this. Now, the reason why this is awful is because the speed boost is timing dependent, and this costs something stupid like 70 or 80% of your mana. But when you can halve the cost of that, it becomes way more reasonable to be able to use this at the right timing. I did not realize just how much that would help. Now, why is this relevant to the rune I'm talking about right now? So, I saw the logic in giving Caleb a speed boost. He's got a lot of green runes, he's got the Giant Green Rune, and most importantly, you could speed stuff up so that it hits your opponent, and then it's off the track, it's already like hit the opponent, and then once everything's off the track, you can use this to delete everything that's left over. And I knew that was a strategy, but I never did it in the past because I just thought that's too expensive. But once I realised just how much I could get away with by just halving the cost of everything constantly since Caleb has this blessing, I realised that this can be a really powerful blessing, genuinely probably S tier. But I'm also kind of conflicted because, like, I feel like it's not S tier because it's that good. I think it's S tier because this enables it. Again, just like this. Again, there's another reason why I put this so high. So... That feels right. I think I put it just below lifesteal. It's kind of similar to it's different problems, but a similar idea to lifesteal. Too expensive and too committal, and really hard to use in the right situation, but is an enormous comeback mechanic when used correctly. Similar kind of thing here. You know, it can destroy your own combos. It can be really expensive to use. You can hurt yourself with it. It can be really just frustrating to try and get to work right. But at the same time, having this rune means there are very few situations you can't come back from, because you can stall for an enormously long time to get until you get the right situation to save yourself by using this rune. So yeah, I think I like that placement. Yeah, I like that placement. All right, pet upgrade, Gizmo's exclusive rune. This is a weird one. Okay, so this is a very cool rune. Like, it feels fun to use, and it feels like a bit novel. But I don't think I can rank it that highly. You see, this might seem like a really good rune at first. It massively speeds up your pet, to the point that when you're casting perfect runes to your pet instead of using the super shield, you can practically regenerate your pet in like under a second, which is really good. Here's the problem. For that reason, I was thinking I might put this particularly high, but then I remembered, wait, isn't this just like straight up worse than the perfect rune blessing then? If you're mostly using this to be able to cast perfect runes and quickly regenerate your pet afterwards, if it's harder to draw than the perfect rune blessing, and if it costs about as much as the perfect rune blessing, and when I say harder to draw, by the way, this is probably the single hardest rune in the entire game to draw accurately. It hates this rune. Like, the accuracy threshold on this must be so high, because I swear sometimes I draw this perfectly and it just doesn't recognize it. So, with all those drawbacks, I think I'd have to put it probably, maybe even here. No, I'll put it there. It's better than Immolation. It's like just barely better than Immolation in my opinion. No, there. I don't think it's A tier. It's a weird one. Because in theory, I think the Super Shield is one of the most powerful things in the entire game, and it's so important to play in the game. And it's a spell that not only can give you perfects, but can also be used to regenerate your Super Shield faster. But when you actually use the Super Shield, and you actually, like, you know, try to speed up the cooldown of the Super Shield, I imagine it must be, but, like, it really doesn't feel like it provides the same speed boost. Like, it probably does, in fairness. I imagine under the hood, it's providing the same multiplier to how much faster it regenerates than if it was not super shielded. But it doesn't feel like it. It feels like it barely speeds it up when it's the super shield, but it massively speeds it up when it's the perfect runes. So yeah, getting super shields back faster is always valuable, but this just doesn't feel like it provides that much of a boost. Like, it's very hard to actually notice how much this is helping you. And that wouldn't be so bad if this rune would be a rune that I could easily throw out whenever I wanted. If it was cheap, well, it is relatively cheap, but if it was also not difficult to draw, and no, it's literally the hardest rune in the entire game to draw accurately. So, yeah. Literally, if this was if this rune right here was as easy to draw as this, it's probably a high A tier. I'd be putting it up like here. Maybe, no, I'd probably even be putting it up like as high as here. If you could draw this easily, just whenever you wanted. But the fact it's so awkward to draw makes it so inconvenient. So I'll put it there. There's the curse that Nadia has that makes people forget 30% of their runes. I used to think it was 4 runes. It turns out I didn't pay attention that it is 4 runes when they have a full grimoire, but you can't actually make them forget all of their runes because every time it hits them, it only makes them forget 30% of what they have. So, yeah. Anyway, So, this is a weird one. It's a very cheap curse, and it's a very big curse. But it's got its problems. Mostly that it isn't actually that significant an effect. Don't get me wrong, it's a cool effect, but you're basically rolling the dice that it actually removes a relevant rune from the opponent's grimoire. In fact, part of the reason that went factored into the decision-making of me making this the best rune in the game is that I realized that, honestly, whenever this curse hits me, what I'm most terrified of it hitting is this. If it hits this, I just can't do combos. Well, I can with this, but again, I would much rather use this to combo blue like curses and all that. So yeah. So this rune is a bit of a hard one to judge, because it is cheap and it is super easy to land. so you can spam it, kind of. And I want to give more credit to curses you can spam. But also, this one's really picky in my experience. It's another one of those ones where it's like, it's easy to draw if you draw it normally, but if you're trying to draw it fast, I swear, you make the teeniest little crease and it just doesn't know what it is. And it's so annoying because it's really easy to draw when you draw it at a normal speed, but when you're in a fast-paced game and you just want to throw it out there as a little bonus because you know it's cheap, you try and draw it fast and it just doesn't like it. So, part of me thinks, okay, there's two different ratings here. If I could draw this fast consistently without it being a coin flip of whether it actually recognized it, honestly, genuinely, probably pushing low C tier, which is not that bad. Just because I could throw it out whenever, and even though it won't always have a significant effect, every now and then it will take something really nasty from the opponent and it lasts quite a while. And again, I literally only have to cast one small green rune alongside it for it to break shield enough for this to hit, since this curse is gigantic compared to most curses. But the fact that I have to spend, like, slow myself down to be able to draw this means that its cheapness doesn't really get value. And so, I guess it's better than that. Better than that. I think I'm stopping there. I think I genuinely think this curse is... No, hang on. I'm actually going to nudge this down. I don't agree with this there being such a big gap here. Yeah, this gap has gotten too big. There is a gap here, but it's not that big. I think I agree with that. Nah, I know it makes E tier a bit larger, but I think that's accurate. Yeah, I think I agree with this. 3, 2, 1. Okay, here's the thing. I know it looks weird having the screen flip curse higher than this one. But my argument is, I think I would genuinely rather have the screen flip curse because I can cast that perfectly. Not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time. If I just take a second to slow down, I can cast that perfectly. This I cannot cast perfectly, except with dumb luck. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. I have casted this perfectly if I'm just going in practice mode and I draw it really slow. But like, if I just am in a normal game, even just drawing it at normal speed, not even fast, I can't really cast it perfectly. So, yeah. Well, anyway, that's all the normal characters. Onto the teachers' runes. You can see we're nearly done here, because of course a lot of the teachers have copies of runes that we've already encountered. Most of the new ones are actually for Carbuncle. This is another one of those ones like the screen flip curse where I saw it and I was like, wait, I swear multiple characters have that curse, right? And then I realized, oh wait, it's just Carbuncle. I don't know why, but this curse feels like it should be for multiple characters, but it's just Carbuncle. This curse is a pretty big curse and it's a pretty cheap one, and it makes it so the opponent only regenerates mana at half the speed. And as well as that, it's super easy to cast perfectly. For all those reasons, put it right there. It's not quite as good as the slow-mo curse, but it has the same kind of effect for a cheaper price as a bigger rune that's way easier to draw perfectly. The slow-mo is still better because the slow-mo actually reduces their mana gain by more than this by a small margin, which is kind of funny, even though that's the whole thing that rune is for, is reducing their mana gain. And the slow-mo rune obviously also gives you more survivability by slowing down their runes. And it's also about the same cost, if I remember right, in mana for this as this. But the fact you can make this perfectly is, yeah, as I say, still pretty good. So yeah, very respectable rune, but nothing that crazy. Alchemist's Fire, which transforms all quote-unquote dart runes into blast runes. Essentially, again, the name is different for every single character in the game, but these small runes are the dart runes, and these medium-sized ones are the blast runes. So basically, you can turn these into these, and these into these. It does it instantly the second you cast this, but it also has a very short timer where if you cast another small red or green, it will still transform that the second you cast it into a medium-sized one. So this blessing is a weird one. It's another one where it's kind of enabled by this. Like, you can tell. Carbuncle is one of the weakest characters in the game to play through, like, the start of his story. But he gets so much better right at the end because this is the last rune he learns. And the second he learns this, everything clicks in place. The main problem is that this is kind of Carbuncle's main gimmick, is being able to turn his dart runes into blast runes. but it costs 90% of your mana. That's a lot. It's just like Immolation, only it's worse than Immolation. Because while Immolation at least provided guaranteed value because you had unblockable runes, this isn't turning your green runes into red runes. So if what you're making into blast runes are the small green runes, there's still a chance that you might not get value if they have some kind of blessing which allows them to just block everything you've set up, even if they are tightly packed together, like a shield blessing like this. So honestly, if it weren't for this, this would probably be here. Honestly, no, it would be here. Which, don't get me wrong, is still high, but for a blessing that's so, like, flashy, you'd think it'd be higher. In combination with that, with this blessing over here, this honestly skyrockets to probably, like, here. Maybe even here. But, there. So, where do I put it? You see, it's also very good with just normal mana gain blessing. Well, I mean, in theory, it would also be really good with, like, this or this. It doesn't have to be the half-cost blessing, although that's the best thing to pair it with. Which is the reason why I'm thinking about it. I think it goes here. I think it's a little literally one place higher than what it would be otherwise. Oh, whatever. Yeah, I think that's right. I think I'd rather have a barrier blessing. I mean, obviously it depends on the situation, but I'd rather have a barrier blessing on average than, even if it's a weak one, than this. It's so good with this. But again, it's another one where it's only good because of this. Anyway, there's the curse that everyone knows and loves Carbuncle for. The wormhole curse, which creates a portal that sends runes that you cast back to yourself if you're hit with this curse, and you hit yourself with your own stuff. This curse is obviously the single best quote-unquote disabling curse in the game. So it has to rank at the minimum here. I'd say it's probably better than that. Probably better than that. Probably better than that. Probably better than that. Is this where I stop it? Yeah, I think I stop it there. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's still a curse. Still very counterable. Unlike these curses, which provide massive reward for being hit while being cheap, this is relatively expensive. And don't get me wrong, it provides pretty good reward. However, because it's such an intense effect, basically completely disabling your opponent while hitting them with their own attacks, it obviously is not quite as long-lasting as the drawing board curses. These will disable your opponent for longer, and they also still aren't cheap, but cost a little bit less than this. Which is why this isn't quite reaching into S tier, sorry, or A tier, but this is still a pretty good curse, as far as curses go. I mean, these are the premium curses. These curses are, like, way better than the others, so this is still a very highly ranking curse as far as curses go. But every curse in the game is kind of knocked down quite a bit just by being a curse. Speaking of curses in the game being knocked down quite a bit, hello, our other F tier curse. These are going to be the only two runes in F tier, and you might notice that, yep, there's a lot of low tier curses here. That's just how curses be. Yeah, this curse is for Madrugada, and it will make your screen go completely black. Well, not completely black, but it'll make it go dark. So essentially, all runes become 100% invisible. You can only see your drawing board. You can't see how much you've got your shield up. You can still hear stuff, but yeah, a lot of stuff you basically can't see anymore. When this is used against real people, it's somewhat effective, but once you get experience with the game, you can get a feel for how fast every rune moves. You can basically predict where on the track everything was by just remembering where things were before you went blind, and then timing how long it's been since that rune, like, you last saw it, and be like, okay, it's going to hit me in like a couple seconds, let me put up my shield, you know. As well as that, there are little tells. Sometimes there are some things that get through the darkness and you can still see it, even though you're not supposed to be able to, like barriers. So yeah. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is, of course, when you're playing this game, you're not playing against other real people. You're playing against AI. So the AI is programmed to not know what to do when they get hit with the Darkness Curse to some extent. But from what I can tell, the difference is very small. Essentially, they have like values for like how much they are intelligent in like assessing threat. Like they have a threat level for each rune that comes at them, and that obviously determines how likely they are to block or super shield. So basically this makes them less good at assessing threat, but it doesn't actually make the runes invisible to them, I don't think, from what I've seen in the code. There are other similar runes like this which actually give the AI a percentage chance to not even see the rune, like not even register it's there. Whereas with this one, it seems like they are just less intelligent with deciding how they deal with the runes coming at them when they get hit with this curse. As you can imagine, that is a very, very small reward to get for a hard-to-land curse that is not particularly easy to draw, even though it's not too hard either. That I don't even think this is cheap as far as curses go. Now, it's still better than Spending Spree, because while Spending Spree does basically nothing, this at least sometimes will make your opponent do something stupid and get hit with a big attack because they couldn't see. But yeah, 90% of the time this is a waste of your time and mana. Anyway, there's the Mana Steal curse, which, looking in the code, it was supposed to be unique to Lepang, but then Hyperion also stole it. Anyway, this curse is the one I mentioned before, where if it hits your opponent, they just instantly lose all their mana, and you instantly get your mana refilled. So, I mentioned that it's very important for every character in the game to have some kind of mana gain, and this is the only example of a mana gain curse. The rest of them are, of course, all blessings. So, can you get by using this, and does that make it one of the strongest curses in the game? It's definitely one of the strongest curses in the game. But I would probably rank it... Okay, actually, I would rank it here. I think it's actually a teensy bit better than Wormhole. Don't get me wrong, Wormhole's good, but again, it's expensive and it lasts for less time than a lot of other curses. This one is nice and cheap. I also can sometimes draw this one perfectly, even in a bit of a rush, so that's nice. It's very easy to draw, and the effect is very useful. Again, it doesn't disable your opponent for long, but it temporarily disables your opponent while simultaneously enabling you to do very high mana cost combos, because again, it instantly maxes out your mana, even if you had 0 mana when it hits the opponent. That being said, it is no replacement for any mana gain blessing. Even the worst mana gain blessings, which are these ones, are more effective than using this curse as your form of mana gain, because at the end of the day, being able to on command activate a way to gain mana is much more useful than having to send a rune at your opponent that they might block, that they might have some way to counter, that you're banking on being able to gain mana off of, and then if it doesn't work, you've got to cast it again and set up an entire new combo for it. You can't rely on this, basically. Even when you send it perfectly at your opponent, what do? Well, they just super shield it. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not going to super shield it all the time, correct? But the fact that they sometimes do means you can't really make plans assuming that it's going to work as often as you'd like to. And that's a shame, because to be able to use it to its fullest potential, you really do have to make plans. Because a lot of the time, you're actually not going to be at 0 mana when it hits the opponent. You're going to be about like half mana. But that means you get less value off of it, because of course it fully replenishes your mana no matter what it was before. So you want to plan around this. You want to spend all your mana just before it hits the opponent. But what if the opponent just super shields and now you have 0 mana, and like you didn't plan for that, and now your combo's broken? And it's like, fuck, I didn't want that to happen. So yeah, still, absolutely one of the more useful curses in the game. Cheap, easy to draw, can be drawn perfectly without having to use the blessing. Really good with the blessing, helps give you mana, which no other curse does as far as I'm aware. Yeah, ticks all the boxes. Ultimate Sacrifice. Now this is an interesting one. This rune is only for Lepang, and I honestly kind of forgot it existed until I replayed the game. And I think I never used to use it as a kid, because I was kind of scared of using it, because this is one of those self-damage runes, and it's even more sketchy than Caleb's, because while Caleb's always just does a flat 10 damage to you, this one will deal 10 damage to you for every rune it removes. It's kind of like Caleb's, but it only removes the opponent's runes. It just deletes every enemy rune coming towards you, but keeps your runes, which obviously sounds really powerful, and on top of that, it's cheaper than Caleb's. So to compensate for how ridiculously powerful that is, you lose 10 health for every rune you get rid of, which is obviously quite a lot of runes. And 10, again, to put that in perspective, is half of the amount of damage you would take for getting hit by one of these. So, yeah. You really don't want to be deleting small green runes with this, because not only could you have just blocked them, but even if you couldn't have blocked them, you literally would take less damage by just letting them hit you than you would by deleting them with this. But when you specifically target larger runes with this, this has some insane potential. You see, while Caleb's you kind of have to plan around because it destroys your own combos as well as your opponent's, this one is one-sided. It only destroys what's on the opponent's screen. So, don't get me wrong, this probably sounds worse than Caleb's right now. Yeah, it's cheaper, but look how long that shape is. It's going to be awkward to draw, right? And then also, you're going to lose way more health. Like, you're not going to be able to cast this consistently, surely. You can cast it like once per game, maybe, before you're getting into the red zone and not able to cast it that much, right? Well, don't get me wrong, that can become a problem, but I think with Lopang specifically, he can really circumvent this. You see, if you can wait until your opponents spend a lot of mana on a whole bunch of spells, so they don't have much mana left, then eviscerate them all with this, and then while they have nothing on the track, you have a lot of free time to spend your mana and set up greedy combos. At this point, you can absolutely spam them with curses, which just completely disable them. Take their mana, cover their screen, just don't let them do anything. And there you go. Yes, this thing does take a lot of your health to use, but the fact that it gives you a long time to take a breather without removing runes on your track means you can put your opponent in a situation where they have no runes coming at you, while they're simultaneously constantly having their mana taken away and their screen covered. And then in that time, you now have set up a situation where you can essentially keep them in a borderline infinite stun lock, where you can just constantly like covering their screen, taking their mana, hitting them with something else, covering their screen, taking their mana. And it's not purely infinite, they can break out, but it is rough. The opponent barely gets a word in once you start this loop going, and this is critical to being able to do a loop like that. Now, I was thinking about maybe not ranking it so high because of that, because, don't get me wrong, that's strong, but that is something you could only do with Lopang, right? But actually, there are a lot of characters that could do this in theory. Anyone with any kind of disabling curse and any good tools to get a curse through someone is able to do this. And that's most of the characters in the game. So I actually feel pretty confident, not just putting it above Caleb's, but even putting it, I would say, here. I think this is like close to S tier kind of power level. Honestly, this rune is crazy good. Yes, it is something that you can't get away with spamming, but with good timing, this can really like be worthwhile. You can negate a hell of a lot of damage, especially against Hyperion with this. And as I say, not only can you do that with good damage, does this negate a lot of damage. Not only with good timing does this negate a lot of damage, and not only is this cheaper than Caleb's, but as well as that, it allows you to really set up these situations where you just get an amazing start that allows you to keep the opponent in a near infinite stun lock that just gives you an amazing advantage. So yeah, this is a very powerful blessing. I really don't know. I really definitely missed out when I didn't used to use this blessing in the past. The potential of it is through the roof. It really could be S tier. It's a little bit dependent on what your grimoire is. If you don't have the disabling tools and the tools to let your disabling curses get through, then it's not going to get as much use. Now, we're nearly at the end, right? We've got two more. Ah, yes. Of course, Lopang's iconic Dragon Egg curse. I'm going to do something probably a bit spicy here.
3, 2, 1. Meet your doom.
Yeah. Okay, I used to think the Dragon Egg curse was one of the most busted things in the entire game. And I lost my mind when I realized, wait, what the fuck? Lopang gets the perfect blessing? I can just cast perfect Dragon Eggs? What? You know, I lost my mind. But I'm not gonna lie, I genuinely think that these are just better. Here's the thing. Dragon Egg costs a lot of mana. Like, something like 60-70% of your mana. And it's not that much less than this. And for that price, you get the same rune, essentially. Because the dragon rune this spawns is just one of these, but faster, essentially. So, you get the same effect as this, but you pay a little bit less, but it's way more counterable. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think that's bad. I think these are still pretty close together in value, but I don't think this is better. And when you realise it's not better than this, and this is kind of B tier, I realise I really can't put this much further up than this on the tier list. So yeah, Don't get me wrong, Dragon Egg is still a cool, fun curse to play around with, and it's still a good curse overall, but it is not as OP as it seems. It's definitely good. It's just, at the end of the day, it's still a curse. Curse is counterable. You get the point. In fact, oh boy. I'm even realizing I think I've got the giant red rune a little too high right now. I think that is what I want. That. I think, yeah, I like that. Yeah. Alright. Last rune. This one is a rune completely exclusive to Hyperion. It is the only rune that Hyperion learns that he's allowed into the story mode that is exclusive to him. Yeah, sorry for dropping that spoiler. You can unlock Hyperion as a playable character. Yeah, this is kind of why for part of me wanted to put this video off, because like I wanted to keep that a secret until the later video, but yeah, fuck it, most of you aren't gonna get this far. This is a me video. This is a video I just wanted to make. Anyway, yeah, so this rune gets bigger for every red rune on the screen. It's essentially the red rune version of this. It's definitely better than the green rune version, because red runes are unblockable to some extent. So that means that when you spam red runes behind this, the spammed red runes aren't being wasted, because they're, you know, going to get through shield. Whereas the green runes behind this, it's hard to not waste them, because you'd have to combo them. But it's hard to simultaneously spam green runes while also comboing them, while also defending attacks coming in from the left side. You know, it's a lot more of a juggling act, where this one is a lot easier to work with. But honestly, same problem as this one, greedy. It seems so OP when you fight Hyperion as the final boss, but like when you actually play as Hyperion, it's not that great, I'm not gonna lie. It's not bad, it's definitely one of the better curses in the game. I mean, you've seen that most of the curses are awful, really bad, awful. So having a curse be in B tier is better than usual, even low B tier. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's still a curse. It's still very counterable. Actually, okay, I'll be a little bit nicer. Would I say it's better than the drawing board curses? I think I would. And while I'm here, I just realised I think I would put this lower than the drawing board curses. I think I put it lower than the... I think I'm putting this all the way down here. Oh boy. Yeah, anyway, I can nudge this here. Does that look right to me? Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, mid-B tier, I guess. Low mid-B tier. I think that's right. It's fun to use this, but it's nowhere near as OP as it is in the Hyperion fight. Unfortunately, as powerful as Hyperion is as a final boss, I'm so mad they did this. Again, I love this game overall, but the teachers, those ones, they didn't, like, fuck around, you know. They were overpowered when you fought them, and then when you got to play as them, they were just as overpowered as they were when you fought them. You know, the only exception is Carbuncle. If you fight him in the Gold Tower as the final teacher, he is able to use the Speed Boost Blessing, which I mentioned he does learn, but only in challenge mode, so he isn't allowed to use that in story mode. But even then, the Speed Boost Blessing isn't very important to Carbuncle's playstyle, and that is the only rune that works like that. Lapang and Madrugada, all of their runes that they can use are runes you can use in story mode when you play them. And Carbuncle, as I say, is all of them except the Speed Boost one, and the Speed Boost one is not very important to his playstyle, so it's not that much of a loss. In fact, it's even better for Lapang, because the AI Lapang cannot use this rune. I can only imagine they were struggling to make the AI use this without killing itself, so yeah. So he can't use that rune. So you even get an extra one that you didn't know you were going to get when you play Lapang. And then Hyperion does the opposite. You'd think, because you have to beat the game with everyone to unlock him, they'd just let you have a bit of a power trip finally after all that work you put in. But no, Hyperion, he's the worst, one of the worst characters in the game. Not the worst, that's Princess Tiffany, but he's one of the worst characters in the game. And it's so sad to say that, but it's true. And that's because it mostly comes down to his lack of blessings. Hyperion's rune set is, he's obviously got the same 4 starting runes as everyone else. He gets this curse, which is nice. He gets this curse, which again, this was supposed to just be for Lapang, but then they, for some reason, gave it to Hyperion. I guess just to fill out his curses. Okay, so those are some good curses. It's a good start. It's looking promising. What do they get from there? They get the Perfect Blessing. Oh, what? This is looking like a good character. They've got the Perfect Blessing. They've got 2 of the better curses in the game. They've got the highest stats in the game. They've got maxed out defense, 4 out of 5 offense, 3 out of 5 speed. That is literally the highest distribution of stats you can find in the entire game. It's really cool. Why would Hyperion not be great? And then you realize, what else do you get? Oh, you get the worst version of the drawing board curse. Okay, that kind of sucks. What else do you get? Oh, you get the mini curse. What? Okay, that sucks. Hyperion doesn't ever even use the mini curse in the fight. Why the hell does he learn that? That's not even, like, in flavor. It doesn't even fit him. Like, it doesn't even fit his character. Okay, whatever. What else does he get? He does get this blessing, this barrier blessing. That's quite strong. Fair enough, fair enough. But then, from there, what does he even get from there? I think he literally just gets this, and that's it. The giant green rune. Now you realise, okay, he's got the giant green rune, but he's got no speed boost, and he's got no size boost, and he's got no mana discount, and he's got no mana gain. And this is where you suddenly realise, like, because I remember when I was first playing Hyperion, I was like, why does he suck? Do I just suck at playing him? Am I playing him wrong? Is he like a high skill ceiling character and I'm just playing him wrong? And I'm just like, this feels so bad, but like he feels so OP when I fight him, and I'm like, why? What is going on here? And I was telling myself for a while that I'm probably just bad with him, but like coming back to it, I'm realizing I'm not just bad with him. He's just badly made at the end of the day, which is sad to say. But as I say, this is why I kept hammering in the whole you need mana gain. Because Hyperion is what happens when you have a character with no mana gain, no speed boost, and no size increase. Yes, you can cast perfect runes on command, but if the opponent has the super shield up, or any way to deal with otherwise unblockable runes like Petal Fall and stuff like that, you have nothing that you can do. You just have to sit there and watch them destroy everything you just sent at them. And if you were a character like Cassie, yeah, when I'm making Cassie as a good example, you know it's a bad situation. You could have casted this to get mana discounts on all this expensive stuff, so that if it got super shielded, you would still have mana left over to follow up on them and attack them while their super shield is down. But no, because you're Hyperion, you have no mana left over, you have to slowly wait for it to all to regenerate, and then send your expensive attack slowly over to them again, and then before it even hits them, like, you probably get like one attack in, and then the next attack again, the next time round, oh, they got their super shield back. So like every other attack you send, even with perfects, is getting super shielded, and you can't do anything about it. You can't speed boost, you can't enlarge, you can't make anything go through their shields or through any means really, unless it's again the normal shield. You don't have anything to help you out, and the final nail in the coffin is you're probably thinking, wait, I swear Hyperion has more runes than just this one curse over here. He does. He has this rune right here and this rune right here. They're challenge mode exclusive. They cheated us. The two runes that made Hyperion OP when you actually fought him as a boss were the rune that made his shield reflect runes back at you and it fully able to block red runes instead of only partially able, and the rune that just made him decide, you know what, I don't like what's going on right now, I'm going to reverse the direction of all runes on the screen, send everything back at you. Which is insanely powerful, obviously. One of the most strong runes in the game. And they're both challenge mode exclusive. Are you kidding me? So yes, Hyperion sucks, and that's why he sucks. And Hyperion is a great lesson in why you need size increases or speed boost to get through super shields, and why you also need mana gain increases to recover from bad situations. When you have none of those options, when you do not have this, all this in your kit, you see how absolutely screwed you are when you actually try and do a normal fight. Even when you're playing as a character with the best stats in the game, with the perfection blessing, with one of the strongest curses in the game, with the giant green rune, it doesn't matter. If you don't have that foundational bread and butter mana gain plus way to empower your runes that helps you get through super shield, you are just what you have is useless. So yeah, that is the list. But just before we end, I think I want to rearrange some stuff. I mentioned S tier is looking a little packed here. I really like in tier lists making S tier really the S tier. Like like S tier should be where the kind of stuff that like. I know not everyone agrees with this take, but I think a lot of the time, if you're putting something in S tier, it should be so strong that honestly, it really should be nerfed. And this isn't really a game where the balance is something they focus on that much. But like, obviously, if this was made into an online like multiplayer game today, these are the runes in S tier that I think need balance changes. Now, I would say I would knock a few of these out of S tier. Now I think about it, the barrier is really strong, but I think it belongs here. This perfect in particular is honestly, now I'm thinking about it, I still put it this high because I'm like, well, it's still a perfect, but honestly, it's such an awful perfect with like how finicky it is with what counts. I honestly think I'm putting it here. I'm putting it this low. And this perfect, no, I think this perfect is still barely S tier. However, while I'm here, I think the speed boost blessings are coming down here. Still very good, but probably not S tier. And I think I'm going to change my mind on the lifesteal blessing being this high. I think that even though the silver lifesteal blessing is a good deal better than the gold one, at the end of the day, it still, again, doesn't help you push advantage, which is usually very useful. I'm going to put it here, and I think I'm actually going to put these up here. Ooh, I'm actually considering. Do I put these in S tier? I genuinely could. Okay, here's the thing. Both of these are in really weird circumstances. This rune is crazy busted with Nadia. Like, the best strategy with Nadia is practically just to spam this rune perfectly, constantly. That's basically the best strategy with Nadia. That's how good, like, this is. So, like, that means I should put it in S tier, right? But then I don't know if it's just, like... It's hard for me to judge if it's just because it's on Nadia that it's that good. Because Nadia doesn't have that many other good runes, and she has the perfect blessing, which obviously makes curses way better because you can just make them perfect whenever you want. If you give this curse to someone who can't make it perfect, is it still this good? And I don't know the answer to that. And this one is kind of the opposite problem, where this one can't be made perfect, so I want to say, oh, it's not S tier. It's really good, but it's not S tier. But then I think to myself, it is a curse which just does 65 damage. If you gave this to a character who can make things perfect whenever they wanted, like, would it be S tier? I think these do deserve S tier. I think they just barely are good enough to deserve it. Alright, I'm going to shuffle a couple things around as well. I actually didn't think this. I really thought I would stick with this being the most important rune in the game. But I think I will swap these. Because don't get me wrong, this is still probably the most quote-unquote important rune in the game. But I have to admit, I'm really just realizing, like, I already knew, but, like, the more I talk about this rune, you know, as I was talking about all these other placements on the tier list, I kept saying this rune wouldn't be that, it, like, feels crazy good, but I'm not ranking it that high, because the only reason it's crazy good is because this rune exists. There are, like, 4 or 5 different runes in this game that all are, like, only so good when you play the characters with them because those characters have this rune. And there are other runes who cannot use, like, characters who cannot use this with their runes, who would be busted if they could. Immolation, as I mentioned, Djinn would be so good if he had this rune. If he had this rune, Djinn would be super powerful. So, yeah, Djinn would be as broken as Madugada is right now if he could use this rune. Yeah, I think I agree with all the rest of these. Just for a satisfaction's sake, part of me wants to take one out of S tier, just to make it a full line. But I don't think I can do that. I think every single one of these here deserves to be an S tier. I think this definitely. Petalfall, I agree, is a third. I think it's okay to have this much of a gap. I mentioned this one is so much more convenient, even though this is still very strong. In fact, you know what? Actually, I'm even going to make the back gap wider. This is a super crucial rune. The medium red rune, I was thinking this might move down, because it is just damage, but just like, there are so many characters who have so many effects but don't really have good bread and butter, where they just need this to work. There are so many characters that would be actually useless if they did not have this rune, because their damage output would just be pathetic. And the fact that they have this nice, consistent, like, unblockable, to some extent, like, non-stop damage that's pretty cost-efficient even if it's a bit expensive, so it's a little bit inconvenient. It's pretty easy to draw. It's just very important. I do think, actually, I could nudge the Perfect Blessing to be above it. In fact, yeah, I could put it there. I think I put it lower before because I was thinking of how much the Perfect Blessing doesn't salvage Hyperion. But I mentioned Hyperion has a lot of problems. Any other character that learns the Perfect Blessing, like, does very well with it. It is definitely one of the more overpowered runes in the game, just being able to decide, yeah, you can't block this. I just decided you can't block this now. You know, I just decided that. I think I still agree with this one. Yeah, I think I do. Okay, weirdly enough, I know it's not the bottom of S tier, but I think the one you have the best argument for potentially not being good enough to be in S tier is this one, even though it's not the bottom. Because the thing is, if this one isn't in S tier, the reason why is because this isn't as good as I think. It's just being made better than I think by the fact it's on Rainbow, and Rainbow's crazy, crazy good. I don't think that's the case, but I'm not ruling it out. It could be the case. Because the thing is, I'm just thinking, this is so good because I mentioned it just lets you have everything at once. Using the massively increased mana gain from this, you can simultaneously have auto-shielding, giant shield, speed boosts, and perfect runes on command, which is obviously insanely powerful. While also being able to just disable your opponent's drawing board whenever you want with this, which you can make perfect, while also having the giant green rune to go for quick kills. You have everything you want. But if you had a character that had less blessings that combined so well to have up at all times, then in theory this would not be so overpowered. But the thing is, what character in the game is like that? Basically just Hyperion. Like, basically every character in the game has blessings that cost a decent amount to maintain, that you can't afford to keep all of them up at once, usually, unless you had something like this. But they are all good to keep up if you can. Like, that applies to basically every character in the game. I think Hyperion is the only exception. And Hyperion is uniquely bad. So, yeah, I think almost any character would be a lot better given this rune. So I think it does justify its S tier placement. But again, this is the only one I could think of taking out of S tier. Again, for the case in which, yeah, it's being overrated just because it's in Rainbow. The only other one is maybe this one, because it is awkward to draw, but it's not that awkward. Like, this is one of those ones where with experience I can draw this faster. This one with experience I can't draw it faster, even though it looks simpler. The high accuracy, the pickiness of it, just means that it doesn't matter how much time I spend learning how to draw this rune, it doesn't seem like I ever get to draw it faster without it also not being drawn correctly as often. So, yeah. I think I like where everything is now. I'm just going to do one quick run through again. I'm very happy with S tier. S tier is definitely, I'm locking that in. A tier. Do I rearrange these a bit? No, I like that. I might put the lifesteal below this. Put the lifesteal below the barrier as well, honestly. But I'll put the barrier here. This barrier is really good. It is really good. Okay, it's so hard to judge because the barrier feels crazy good, but I have to remember the only two characters who have this are Hyperion, who is awful, so this seems better by comparison because, you know, it's one of the only good runes he has. He has this and the Perfection Blessing. Those are his only two blessings, and they're his best two runes because they're blessings. But they're also just good blessings anyway. And the only other character that gets this rune is Faye. And because Faye has Petal Fall, her defensive game plan is like completely different. Like, Faye can just take 0 damage because she has Petal Fall and this. But I don't know how much of that work is Petal Fall and how much of it is this. And like, if you took this away, would Faye still take 0 damage a lot of the time? And I think the answer is no, which is why I'm putting it this high, but it might not be. I'll put it there. I think I might be overrating it a little bit just because it exists on characters that already make it look good. Like, Faye makes it look good with Petal Fall, and Hyperion makes it look good because the rest of his runes fucking suck. Okay, the rest of this I'm pretty happy with. I like Lifesteal here. I like Caleb's thing here. I like the Perfection Blessing. Ooh. I'm gonna knock it down even further. I'm still knocking this down further, by the way. It sounds like such a small thing, but how picky this is such a massive downside. Oh, I'm actually at the point where... This is the point I'm at. I think I'm happy with that. Again, I keep thinking these look too high, but then when I try and reason, okay, what below it would I put higher than these Mana Sink Blessings? I realize I wouldn't put any of these below this higher than these. The only ones I'd think are these 3 shield ones, but I don't think I can justify putting them above the ones there in between, so yeah. Auto shield ones, yeah, those belong there. Perfect ones there. Anti-magic is so hard to judge, but I think I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to keep these. These feel worse than these. But these enable playstyles to work that wouldn't work otherwise, and these ones don't. They just kind of help you out rather than enabling playstyles. So even though these feel better, I think these are more important to making a functional character. So I think I'll put those above it. I think I'm happy with A tier then. B tier, yep. Maybe move it a bit down. I think I'm swapping those, but between these two, it's really hard to pick. I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. Is this maybe too low or too high? 3, 2, 1. Put it there. That lessens the gap as well. Is this really between these two? No, I think I'll put it there. But I think I'm also going to create a new gap here. Oh god, no I'm not, because I'm going to want to put these there. I'm going to put that above that. Would I rather have this than the blessed? I'd rather have it than the silver one. I would not rather have it over the bronze one. The bronze one is convenient. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with that. Pig one, yeah, I agree with all that. C tier. Oh, it feels weird. I don't like having this curse this low, because it feels good, but at the same time, it's just outclassed. Just the curses above it are just better. Like, it feels like this is too low for this, but I just can't make an argument for putting this above any of the curses above this. Like, all of these curses above this are better. I don't know, this is quite a big gap. But this version's so much more awkward to draw. It doesn't look like it, but the bottom part, it's so finicky about it. So I think I'll keep that there. In fact, I'm stretching. I'm gonna do that. You know what? I've really changed my mind on this. I'm giving this. I was giving this too many points for being cool. It is greedy, and that is the main problem. But honestly, even when it's not, when you capitalize on it, it's not that great. Honestly. Oh, honestly, am I even going this low? I think I'm going that low with it. I think this is really not good. You know, I think this is cool, so I want to give it points for being cool, but like, when I really criticize this rune and really look at it for what it is, I can't make an... I never use this rune. When I play Fae, I do not use this rune unless I'm just having fun, and I'm not try-harding, I'm just, like, trying this rune out for fun. If I'm actually trying to win games, I literally never cast this rune as Fae. So I think I have to put it this low. Probably even there. Honestly, yeah, I think I agree with that. So yeah, are we locking in E tier? This is a little bit high. I could swap these around. Nah, again, being able to cast perfectly is convenient. So yeah, I think I stick with that. The only other thing I might change is this could go F. You see, the thing is, this feels like an F tier rune. I never use it, ever. And like, that's the kind of, yeah, that's F tier. Like, E tier is, I basically never use this, but there are niche situations in which this is useful. F tier is actually, I do not use this. Oh, actually, speaking of which, I think I'll swap these, because I think I use this a bit more than this. And it's like, these are actually useless. Like, effectively, there is always something better than this. And I think to myself, well, this does damage the opponent, and it does make them lose mana, and it does disable them for a couple seconds. That's like a lot of things it's doing at once. And it's not that expensive, and it's a little bit hard to draw, sure. So, like, it shouldn't be F tier, because it can do things. It's just not usually the best option. But, like, at the same time, when do I pick this? When do I ever think, yes, this is the curse I want to cast right now? With this one, the answer is at least sometimes, and this one, the answer is also at least sometimes. This one, the answer is never. I think I can make the argument to put this in F tier. I think I can. Again, it feels a little bit weird, because, like, these two are, like, actually no use case in which they are good. This is like, well, it does damage, but then when is the mana cost for damage for this going to be more efficient than just casting this? Or this? When? And it's going to be harder to land, it's going to be more time drawing it, it's going to be more mana spent, and the only benefit you're going to get is that the opponent's disabled for like a second extra, but you're probably not even using that at the timing at which you're throwing this out, and you probably have a better curse for that anyway. So yeah, I think I'll put that there. Alright, so yeah, that's my tier list for the most part. I would rank the custom runes, but as I say, it feels like there's kind of no point. I did it with my tier list on the Discord server, just for the fun of it, but I kind of regretted doing it. In fact, that's kind of part of the reason why I made a tier list just on the server and then decided to make a video on it, like, is to kind of have a test run where I'm like, do I want to rank the custom runes? And I think the answer is no. Just because, again, the balance on these are so off. Some of them are, like, broken, stupid broken, like this, or like this, and they're, like, clearly S tier, and, so, like, some of them are garbage and borderline completely useless, like, this one, or this one, or, honestly, this one, unfortunately, even though it's a cool effect, or these, just... So many of these are useless, and then so many of these are crazy overpowered. And then there's ones that are just like, they are technically overpowered, but most of the time they're terrible. Like this one, Pin Power. This Blessing costs 0 mana to cast, and it only deals 5 damage to yourself. Like, so you basically hurt yourself a teensy bit, and what it does for that is it instantly casts a random rune from your Grimoire for free. That can be the single most broken rune in the game. Like, that can be casting runes that should be costing like 70% of your mana for 0 mana, for only a teensy amount of self-damage, less than a single one of these, and you can spam it. You can spam the hell out of it. And that's broken. But that's all luck dependent. 90% of the time, it's going to send random garbage at your opponent that is going to barely do anything. In which case, it's an awful rune. So, like, where do you rank that? You know? So, yeah, it's really hard to rank these, and I don't think there's much utility in ranking them. But I will say, I guess one of the more interesting ones is, I'll just throw this one in there as an extra. This is the only other one I'd say is F tier. I put it here because... Okay, this one's a weird one. This one is Hazy Eyes. It's a blessing only Strat can learn, and again, it's challenge mode only. And essentially what it does is it makes all of your runes on the track transparent. Against human players, this is actually like here, worst rune in the game. Actually worse than this. It would actually do nothing. Because when I say transparent, I do mean transparent, not invisible. They are harder to see, and when there's like multiple clumps of runes, it's kind of hard to see which is which in that clump. But you know that there's a big clump of stuff coming at you, so you know to put up your shield. And as well as that, you can probably tell the colours of the runes in that clump of stuff, even if you can't tell what each individual rune is exactly. So it's not very useful to take the time out to draw this shape, especially because it requires a high amount of accuracy for it to count. So you have to take the time out with a fast-paced character that's like plays around speed to draw this, just to make it a little bit harder to see your stuff. However, against actual AI, which is what you're going to be playing about most of the time, it's actually a pretty good rune. Because essentially, when you turn these runes transparent, the way that the AI is coded to respond is that they can only recognize what 60% of the runes that are turned invisible are. So, sorry, 40%. So 60% of them they just can't see, and 60% of them they just won't shield, which is obviously pretty good. So yeah, that's a bit of a weird one. I just want to throw that one in there, because that one I think I could rank. Like, against human players, like, there, and against AI, like... There. No. There. Yeah. But the rest of them, I feel like it would just be S tier, S tier, F tier, S tier, S tier, F tier, E tier, F tier, S tier, you know, it would be a bit of a mess. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching this. I know it's a bit of a longer video, and I know that it might not exactly be the kind of stuff that you're hoping for. Again, I'll be making more videos that like more like edited and more catered to what people are probably more interested in future. It's just this week, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really feeling it. So I just wanted to do something for me, but while still putting something out there, because I don't want to put nothing out. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.